Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call our meeting of Monday, April 20th to order. We have electronic participation. This is our second one. Just before the call to order, I just wanted to say that our thoughts are with the families suffering after the tragic events that happened in Nova Scotia over the weekend. And it was just such a tragic thing. And we are all feeling the loss in Nova Scotia, and I just wanted to get that off the top. Thank you. Call to order. Councillor Bothwell.
Here.
Councillor Dunstall. I see you there. It looks like you're muted.
I keep getting this box popping up in the middle of my
Okay.
Okay.
Councillor Frake.
Here.
Councillor Frake's here.
For the delayed reaction here.
Yes. Councillor Cadwell.
Here. Here.
Councillor Ritchie. I see you there.
Here.
Councillor Sharp.
I'm here.
Councillor Bain.
Okay. Here.
And Councillor Vardy.
Here.
Are there any disclosures of interest? Seeing none, we have up first the adoption of the previous council meeting minutes. We need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the minutes from the April 6th, 2020 council meeting be approved. Councillor Bothwell?
Yay.
Councillor Bothwell is yay. Councillor Dunstall?
Yay.
Councillor Dunstall is yay. Councillor Frake?
Yay.
Councillor Frake is yay. Councillor Cadwell? Is he gone?
Yay.
Councillor Cadwell's yay. Councillor Ritchie?
Yay.
Councillor Ritchie is yay. Councillor Sharp? Councillor Sharp is yay. Councillor Bain?
Yay.
Councillor Bain is yay. Councillor Vardy?
Yay.
And myself, yay. So that is carried. Need a mover and a seconder for the 2018 audited financial statements. Councillor Dunstall moved. Councillor Ritchie seconded. Is there any discussion on? All right. All right, and I guess Stephen Gruninger has a presentation, or is it James Brennan? Doesn't say. Welcome, James, and oh, I'm unmuted. Welcome, James and Stephen. Sorry about that.
I thought you had to do it yourself.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Jordan, members of council. Before I present the statements, I just wanted to mention that I know these statements are coming a bit late. They're 2018's financial statements. There are a couple reasons for that, one being the expedited and very comprehensive budget that we did in 2020, as well as the impact the biodigester had on these financial statements. So those were a couple of reasons why these 2018 statements are coming in 2020. So also, I just wanted to mention that the town's auditor, James Brennan of Grant Thornton, is here joining the council meeting with us tonight. So if you have any specific questions for him, please do so. So to begin with, what I will be doing is I will be sharing my screen with council as I go through the financial statements. I won't be going through the statements line by line, but there are 4 or 5 key factors that impacted the financial statements in 2018, and I'll be going through those. But before I do that, I just want to mention that our auditors have given the town's financial statements an unqualified opinion, which means that we had a clean audit. Also, I should mention that the town statement showed a net deficit for the town in 2018 of about $1.5 million. So I'll start to share my screen now as I go through the financial statements and I talk about the key factors that impacted the statements in 2018. So let me know if you can see my screen. Can everybody see my screen? Perfect. Okay, so the 5 factors that I wanted to talk about regarding the 2018 statements are: 1, the increase in our WSIB future benefit liability. 2, the change in the way the biodigester, or in this case, Holdco, was reported on our financial statements. As well, I wanted to talk about the write-down on the biodigester in 2018. As well, there was a write-down on the gas-powered turbine in 2018. And we also, there was a write-down on a note owing to MPI from GEI in 2018. So those are the items I wanted to address that have a fairly significant impact on these statements. First off is the WSIB future benefit. So I'll just go to that line in the financial statements. So you'll see here under employee benefit obligations under liabilities, there's an amount, a liability set up for about $2.2 million. So every year, the WSIB's actuaries perform a calculation of the town's potential future liability with regard to WSIB claims. So in past years, there was usually a very minor adjustment to this liability. But since the province enacted presumptive legislation for firefighters, the balance of this liability has increased substantially. So just as a reminder, the presumptive legislation says that if a firefighter develops certain forms of cancer, they are deemed to have contracted it through their duties as a firefighter. And this liability, so what happens is if there are future payouts to a firefighter, due to claims that are submitted, the town will be liable for those claims. So in 2018, the liability increased by about $468,000. In 2017, the liability increased by $113,000. So this liability now specifically for the WSIB is $1.2 million. On this number on the balance sheet, you can see this 2.2. Another $1 million is for post-employment benefits, something else. So there was a concern when this legislation was introduced that it could have a significant impact on smaller municipalities to have to potentially pay out such large liabilities in the future. Yet the provincial government does not require that municipalities budget or fund these liabilities. So I just want council to be aware that as we go forward, this liability potentially could increase as, say, more firefighters develop a form of cancer, and that this is an unfunded liability. So that is point one. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the way the change in the way the biodigester, or I should say Holdco, was reported in the financial statements. So the Municipal Act refers to a municipal subsidiary corporation as a government business enterprise, or a GBE. In 2018, it was determined that Holdco was no longer met the definition of a GBE, and that it was no longer able to meet its liabilities. This required the town to change the way it reports the company on its financial statements. This change was required going back to 2017. The old way of reporting was done under what is called the equity method, which is a much simpler way of reporting, to something called the consolidation method, which is a bit more complex. So I will show you on the town's financial statements, this line here, investment in government business enterprise. This is where all of the town's subsidiary companies used to be reported. So in 2017, if I just slide down to note 2, this amount showed up as $22 million. And that would have included Holdco and its subsidiaries included in that number. What we've done now using the consolidation method is we removed Holdco and its subsidiaries from this line. So this line now will only report Niagara Power and GPI, or the regulated companies. So we made an adjustment of $5 million, which was the equity in Holdco, which leaves $17 million in 2017. So if I slide back up, so this is where you can see that $17 million. And in 2018, the amount has been further reduced down to $16 million. So that was a significant change in the way we report our subsidiary companies. So by removing Holdco from this line, what happens is, if I come back down, the reduction in the investment line filters through to all of the other asset and liability accounts for the town. So we've picked up from Holdco all of their assets and liabilities in our balance sheet in the appropriate line. So one in particular would be long-term debt. So previously reported in 2017 was the town's debt of $3.8 million. And that was, if you may recall, the debt for the fire station. We've now added in the debt of Holdco and its subsidiaries. And that's why we're now showing in 2017, at the end of 2017, total debt of just over $11 million. And that same thing has been done for all of the other balance sheet accounts or assets and liabilities. You can see that other receivables went up from 3.5 million. Our assets went from 265 million to 276 million as we incorporated the assets of Holdco and its subsidiaries. So that is one significant change in the statements, is in that if you compare the 2017 statements that were actually approved last year, they won't match up with these statements. And that's why we had to restate the statements in 2017 so we could show you the impact, the combined or the variance, the difference from 2018. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the write-down of the biodigester. So in 2018, Holdco was determined to be impaired a year before it was actually sold in 2019. This necessitated a write-down of the company by approximately $2.8 million. Also, we had a write-down of the turbine. So the turbine was deemed to have been impaired in 2018, and this asset was completely written off during the year in 2018, and the total amount of the write-off was about $760,000. Also, GEI owed a note payable to NPI for approximately $2.4 million. In 2018, NPI wrote down that note, a portion of the note, by $1 million. It was deemed to be uncollectible. This resulted in a loss coming forward up to the town of about $300,000, a further loss. So those are the main points that I wanted to talk about in the financial statements. It was a tough year. There were a number of losses that hit us. And I think we all knew this was going to eventually hit us. And here it is. Going forward in 2019, there's still an amount that NPI is still, they still have a note that they haven't completely written down for about $1.2 million. And I would imagine they don't have the money to pay that off in any way. So I'm sure that'll be a further write down in 2019. So that'll also flow up through to the town in 2019. If you have any specific questions about the statements, please ask, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Yeah, Councillor Frake, I see your hand up. Couldn't see everyone on the screen, so my apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm not sure whether this question is for Stephen or whether it's for James. When we did our audited statements in 2018, the first time, the information you had was obviously from the Holdco companies was incorrect, I assume. So we must have made some assumptions there to come up with an audited statement. Is that correct?
Sorry. Councillor Frake, I'm sorry, certain assumptions, I'm not sure I understand that.
When we closed off our audit in 2017, I guess. Right. We must have had to have made some assumptions that was totally incorrect. So we closed off the books, had our audited statements approved, but was based on erroneous information. Is that correct? Because of the biodigester?
Yes, I would agree. At that time, we didn't know the full impact of the biodigester, of Holdco and its financial position. It wasn't until 2018, or I should say the end of 2018, when an investigation was done into the company, when a new board of directors took over and brought to light the financial position of the company. So in 2017, we were pretty much unaware of the impact that it was going to have on the town.
Stephen, if I could.
Absolutely.
The prior period adjustment doesn't change any numbers. It just reallocates them along through the balance sheet. The accumulated surplus and the annual surplus deficit did not change. It was just a reconfiguring of how it was to be reported on the financial statements. The 17 numbers did not change.
It's not until 2018 that we actually we deemed the company to be impaired. So that is when the write-down occurs. We did a restatement of 2017 showing the new proper way to account for Holdco, and that was using this full consolidation method as opposed to this equity method. I know it's very technical and it can be difficult, but it was something we were required to do under PSAP, Public Sector Accounting Board accounting rules.
So the rules changed.
No, the rules didn't change. The rules were always there. We just had to now start following them when we determined that the company was impaired.
What I'm trying to understand is how we can audit, have an official audit approved, and then unapprove it and rewrite it again into another set of audits.
Yeah,
How that works. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, sure. As information comes to light in a future year, we have to go back and restate financial statements when we have new information about a prior period. James, is that am I correct? And
Yes.
Okay, I'll accept that. So just another quick question if I can.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, on your Grant Thornton's PowerPoint slides on
Yes.
page 8, I think it's 8. I get my glasses here. Sorry, James, hang on a second. On page 8, the reflection of those numbers on page 8 should also reflect the numbers you've stated on page 13, which is in note 2. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
There are
That's a summary of note 2.
Yeah, it's kind of, there's some minor variances between the numbers, but accepting that. So our liabilities in 2017 was 11,347,943. And our liabilities went up by 7.5 million as we roll into 2018. Is that right?
Yes, the increase was due to the liabilities from the Holdco that were consolidated.
So that 7.5 million are the liabilities that came out of those companies.
that's
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
There was $4.5 million. There was a bank loan owing to the bank through Holdco. There was some capital lease obligations as well. And there was one more item. NPI, yes, the note 2 NPI, the $2 million, 2.4 million.
And the asset line, we can look at that.
Mhm.
The restated number is 32,499,000. I'm looking at your PowerPoint slides, actually. I can go back to the notes, actually, if you don't mind. Yeah, the PowerPoint, let's go back to the PowerPoint slide. It says the assets restated were 32,499,200. The restated ones. Does that represent the value of all the companies?
That was the book value of the investment in the Holdco that was redistributed amongst the assets and liabilities in the restatement.
So that includes GEI, GHI, 1938427, and GPI?
Yes,
So all of the hydro companies are lumped into that number.
except for NPI and the regulated company.
Okay, got you. Okay. All right. Just wanted to clarify that. Okay, I got you. Thanks. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Frake. Up next, we have Councillor Vardy, then Councillor Bothwell. Councillor Vardy.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. The first one, Stephen, can you define, what did you say, impaired?
Yes.
Define impaired.
Impaired. Specifically in terms of how it relates to an asset or the company itself. So in terms of Holdco or an asset, Yes. Oh, okay. So basically, an asset is impaired if it doesn't provide a future economic benefit. So you're not going to receive any. It's not going to generate any future revenues. So, say for instance,
It's like saying it's a write-off.
it's yes. It was written. Yeah, they were written off. Exactly.
So when you talked about, and I can't remember if it was 2017 or 2018,
Mhm.
the asset value of Holco, that represented not its actual value, but how much had been invested into it, right? From
Yeah,
that.
it's book value. Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
So it's not a valuation. It's
That's
this is
right.
how much we've spent on this thing.
Yeah, it's basically it would be it's share capital, and it would include all retained earnings and all previous profits that were that form part of that provides the or makes up the equity of the company.
Okay. And then my next question and last question is you mentioned that we had at the end of 2018, a 1.5 million deficit.
That's right.
Well, I didn't think municipalities could run a deficit. So what happens to that 1.5 million? Does that mean in 2019, we had to find an additional 1.5 million in addition to, everything we said we were going to do in 2019?
Yeah, it's not that a town can't have a deficit. If your revenues are less than your expenses, you'll have a deficit, or if your expenses are more than your revenues. What we can't do is we can't budget for a deficit. So in this case, we have a deficit, and I specifically did some research on this in the Municipal Act in terms of what the town's obligations are with regard to incurring a deficit. And the Municipal Act specifically states that if they were municipal expenses that were incurred that provided or that resulted in this deficit. And none of these expenses really that created this deficit were they were all non-cash items. They were basically all write-downs. So it's not funds that we would have to make up in a future year, because it was all just a write-down. It was a
It just represents the losses then.
exactly right.
Okay.
It was basically the write-down of undepreciated amortization.
So basically,
Sure.
biodigester and that other thing.
Yeah, and they're all non-cash losses in the sense that we paid, all those assets were paid for at the time they were purchased.
Okay.
So the cash has already left, and now we're just basically depreciating the asset over its life. So they're basically all non-cash losses. James, is there any? Do you?
No, that's exactly right. It's the deficit was created by the write-downs and the losses.
Thank you.
Councillor Bothwell?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I don't know if perhaps Stephen can help me understand this question. So in the report, we actually received NPI dividends of 417,751 or so. We were told in December of 2019 by Kurt, who came up to council in December and spoke, that we weren't going to get our 462,307,000 this year because of NPI's struggles. The dividend that the town would get was used often to offset a lot of some of the financial commitments that we would make to the community, and we would use those dividends to help out in various ways. Since we're not getting it because of NPI's position, which I suspect is as a result of a lot of the issues that we're suffering, that one, will our dividend that we're not getting help the town with the future hardship that MPI is? Like, will they directly apply it to something so it doesn't, so we get a benefit back? To the town?
Yeah, it definitely will. We did receive a dividend in 2018. It was about 411,000. The 462, I believe, was the full dividend. Fortis has their share of the dividend, their 10% share. Going forward, it probably wouldn't be probably in MPI's best interest maybe to declare an additional dividend just because of the situation they're now facing, to pay out more cash to the town. You know, there's most likely going to have to be a write-off of that debt. Now, the town did receive some proceeds, some net proceeds that are currently sitting with MPI, and those could be used to write off that or to fund that that remaining note. But it's my understanding that those funds would come up to the town, those net proceeds from the sale. And then that would leave MPI to have to write off their debt. Again, James, does that sound?
I think that's the basics, yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, just to double check on the amount that's in the current 2018 statement of dividends. Is that not the 2017? Are they not always like 1 year behind? Is that not the 2017 dividends that are in there for 414, 751?
No, we make sure that the period the dividend pertains to is in the correct year.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cadwell is up next.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan. Just a question with regards to the 4.5 loan that the town co-signed back maybe two terms ago. I forget now. It's been a while. What is the status to that, Stephen? If you wouldn't mind giving
Yeah,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
sure. That note was paid out upon the sale of Holdco and its subsidiaries.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
So that debt will come off the town's financial statements for 2019.
2019? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, up next is Councillor Sharp.
Thanks, Mayor Jordan. To Stephen, I have a question about the employee benefits you mentioned when you shared your screen. Those are WSIB rates. Do we get any kind of rebate, or is there any amount that'll be returned from this?
No, so that amount, the 2 million, the 2.2 million that's showing on the financial statements, about half of that is related to WSIB, and it's the potential liability that exists that we may have to pay out in claims down the road. We had, I think, 2 or 3 firefighters who ended up with a certain form of cancer that the presumptive legislation deems to be caused by their duties as a firefighter. And so there's potential payouts that the town would have to make for, say, lost income benefits resulting from their cancer. The town is what is considered a Schedule II employer, meaning that our WSIB is self-funded. We don't pay WSIB rates. It saves the town. I did a calculation just not long ago. If we were to pay WSIB rates, we would be paying to WSIB, I believe it was an additional $300,000 to $400,000 a year, which we don't currently pay. So our WSIB has always been, our claims have always been fairly low and consistent, but this presumptive legislation is causing a bit of concern. And as I mentioned, the province doesn't require municipalities to budget for or fund these liabilities. And I just want council to be made aware that these liabilities exist. And at some point, there could be some kind of a pay down of these liabilities.
So my question was, and you mentioned that there's potential costs, like if for these
Right.
firefighters, if they have lost, but if we don't have those costs, if these firefighters, and we hope that they get well, then
Right.
they lose income, and then if we don't have those costs, does this number go down?
Yes, would it go down? Well, they readjust the number every year. They look at the current status of the claims that have been filed. So I guess it's potential that yes, it could come down. James, what do you think? Do you think that liability?
I think it depends on what the assumptions are that they're using to arrive at the actuarial amount. But if the numbers change more favorably, then the number could come down.
So are we paying some kind of percentage to come up with this, like a rate?
No. WSIB's actuaries do all the calculations. They look at mortality tables. They look at benefit costs, increases. They look at the number of firefighters that have filed claims, and they crunch some numbers, and they come up with this potential liability amount.
So what I'm getting at here is that I've done some work in the private sector, paying into WSIB, paying rates, and each year you get a rebate based on how much. If you have claims, then you get less of a rebate, or you can even pay more.
Right.
But if you have under a certain amount of claims or lost time, then you get a rebate. And so if we are budgeting a certain amount based on numbers created by WSIB, and then we don't have any incidents or injuries.
But again, we don't pay rates to WSIB. We're self-funded. So if there's a claim against the town, like if there's a WSIB claim, we pay it. The town pays it. And if you're what it's called a Schedule 1 employer, like say the town of Lincoln, I believe they're a Schedule 1 employer. They pay WSIB premiums to WSIB every month.
Yeah.
And once they do that, they don't have to worry about a future claim. That's all covered by WSIB. So it's like you're buying insurance, really, is what it comes down to. The town, because its WSIB claims have always been very favorable, we didn't want to pay WSIB premiums. And like I said, it saves us, $300,000 to $400,000 a year in premiums. So there's no rebate to get back because we don't pay them. We don't pay WSIB anything.
But if we don't have any claims, then it costs us nothing.
Exactly.
So what I'm getting at is if we don't have any claims, this number will go down.
There are outstanding claims, though, that certain firefighters have filed, or not so much claims, but it's been determined by them that certain firefighters fall under this presumptive legislation that they have cancer, and that it has been deemed to be because of their firefighting activities. Okay. So we could get future claims, actual monetary claims for them in the future.
No, that's good. I'm glad that we have money to support our firefighters. And
sure, we do have a reserve for WSIB. I believe it's in the range of maybe over $100,000. Don't quote me exactly the exact number, but something along those lines that we could use to help offset some of these costs. It's something maybe council might want to consider in a future budget year, funding slowly, putting money aside, additional monies into a reserve going forward to help look at funding this potential liability. We can have further discussions about it later, but I just wanted council to be aware that this liability has been increasing, especially over the last 2 years, but in order of $600,000.
Okay, thank you, Stephen.
Councillor Ritchie?
I think you've unmuted me by mistake.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess my question to Stephen is that it doesn't seem like there's any need right now, but should we be looking at the possibility of going to being a Schedule 1 versus a Schedule 2 with the potential cost to, some of the possibility of some WSIB claim? Is that something we should be looking at, monitoring? Just what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's something we could definitely look at. Again, it's going to have a big budget impact in a future year, of maybe 3 to 4%. And all the claims that were existing at the time, we would still be on the hook for anything that was outstanding. So it would help protect maybe against future claims, but not any claims that have currently arisen or have arisen in the past. But yeah, it's certainly a discussion we can have, and I welcome the discussion. I know that, it would be expensive. So, we would need, I would need council's, decision on that if we decide to switch back to Schedule 1.
But it might be just, my thought process here is that it might be something to look at based on the demographics of the fire service, because as many people won't know, presumptive legislation will also go by the number of years of service that firefighters will have under their belt to get get the presumptive legislation. That's why. So it might be something to look at.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you, Your Worship. If I might add a question to this discussion about firefighters, and this go to Stephen. Can a retired firefighter that's been retired for a number of years who develops cancer and it's job related still be eligible and still put in a claim?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Yeah, I personally knew somebody in the Hamilton firefighters squad that was retired for many, many years, and I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, developed cancer, and everything was looked after. Nursing came into the home, and it's a liability that's out there for years to come. But the other question I had about firefighting: has the equipment not improved, and the risk is going to start to at some point reduce that liability because the risk is not as great as it used to be? Because firefighters just went into a fire with a mask on. Now they have a lot of protective respiratory equiment. Would that be the case? Or a couple of firefighters?
I mean, I'm not an expert on that, but I would like to think yes. Now there's a new requirement now that when firefighters come back to the station, all their bunker gear has to be washed. It's even those fine particles that are left on bunker gear. And I'm hoping that, with a lot of new measures and safety measures put in place, that yes, this liability going forward would be, we'd be mitigated. Perhaps Councillor Ritchie might be able to speak to that better than I could.
Yeah. It just, if I could ask one other question about this write down of 1.5 million for 2018, going forward, we did a lot in 2019 relating to that biodigester. I just wanted to get a sense from you, Stephen, does the picture look a little better in 2019 when it comes to these write downs? Because we were able to sell the biodigester. What's your feeling? I know you don't have the actuals, but is the situation improved in 2019?
Well, like I said, there still is that issue of the remaining note that is still receivable by MPI, and it is basically will be deemed to be uncollectible. So there is still that hanging over the consolidated, the group of companies. So yes, there will be an impact in 2019 as well.
Yeah, well, of course, we won't be getting the dividend, and that could go on for a number of years until that they write that all off. That could take some time too. So, yeah, it will.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm hoping that we can see a better picture in 2019 with the sale of the biodigester.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you, Worship.
Councillor Vardy.
Hang on. Okay, thank you. I guess what I'd like to ask you, Stephen, sorry, the other phone's going there. Councillor Bothwell raised the issue of the dividend. And I just want to ask you, upon reflection, knowing the kind of state all those companies were in and the various write-offs and the fact that we did receive a hefty dividend from NPI, would you say that in hindsight, perhaps NPI should have had GPI retain the money to make the kind of necessary capital investments, that are needed, instead of finding themselves in the state they're in now, where, they're having to really make up for all the time that they paid the town investments with maybe perhaps money they should have used for other things.
Yeah, I would agree, absolutely. I believe that, in 2018, maybe that dividend shouldn't have been declared. From what I understand, GPI has a lot of infrastructure that needs to be replaced as well. They have an infrastructure gap as well with their assets. And I think, $500,000 or almost $500,000 probably wouldn't have been a bad thing to hold on to. So yes, I would agree. It was a decision at the time made by a different council, a different board of those companies to declare that dividend.
All right. Thank you very much, Stephen.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, I'm going to read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Ritchie. Resolved that the Town of Grimsby's 2018 draft audited financial statements be received and approved. All in favor, Councillor Bothwell? Councillor Bothwell's yay. Councillor Dunstall?
Yay. Finally.
Councillor Dunstall is a yay. Councillor Frake?
Yay.
Councillor Frake is a yay. Councillor Cadwell? Councillor Cadwell is a yay. Councillor Ritchie?
Yay.
Councillor Ritchie is a yay. Councillor Sharp?
Yay.
Councillor Sharp is a yay. Councillor Bain? Councillor Bain is a yay. Councillor Vardy?
Yay.
Councillor Vardy is a yay, and myself, I'm a yay, so that is carried. Up next, we have award of contract PWC 20-02320002, the 2020 hot mix road resurfacing program. Brandon Wortman's here to answer any questions if there are any. Council, do we have any questions? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I have a question. So I'm looking at the bids that we received, and then I look at the end of the report. It says that we're $400,000 under what we budgeted. Could we just have some explanation why we're under, and just how that happened?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Sharp. As you can imagine, right now we're dealing with different times, and one of the things that we had anticipated that some of the contractors may not be as busy as usual. So we feel that this is probably one of the major reasons why the bids did come in low. So hopefully that.
So my question is, and Brandon, you might be familiar, there's like a meme or a picture of a dinghy, and it says the contract, and then there's a yacht, and it says the change orders, right? Is there that possibility here that that they might be bidding low, expecting that they won't have work, and then they get work, and they start to apply extras.
Sure. So that's always a possibility when we're dealing with contracts. Unforeseen circumstances could come about, but typically they're nothing significant. Typically, we look at in the 2% to 5% range in terms of your overall contract costs as an average considered acceptable amount of contingency.
Okay, so what happens to this 400,000? Does it go into a reserve, or how do we deal with the extra?
Yeah, that's correct. So this is funded through the OCIF grant. So it's actually 90% through the OCIF grant. So what happens with the OCIF? So we get funding from the province for that, and then any unused funds go back into a reserve, and then we would use those for projects next year or other projects that were funded through that this year. So I think the funding, Stephen, maybe you'd be able to correct me, but I think it's we have 3 years to spend the OCF grant that we get from the province on an annual basis.
Okay, great work. Excellent job, Brendan, bringing the job in at such a low cost. Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Cadwell, you're up next.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jordan, and through you to Brandon. Does the low price of oil right now, Brandon, does that have any factor in obviously the cost of asphalt and that? Is that a factor that would be incorporated in this tender process too? Thank you.
Yes, it could be. I don't have the exact, I have to do some investigating to see if that's the case, but I'm sure it is. Obviously, there's petroleum products in asphalt, and there's some of that content, the fact that, crude oil prices are cheaper, that, obviously the asphalt is affected by that.
Great. Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to congratulate you on coming under budget there. I guess my only question that I have is that additional unforeseen costs that may arise during the construction phase. So my question is that is there a similar formula through all these bids that the companies would use? So let's say if it's 2%, is every company 2%, or is there different rates for different companies?
And can you just clarify in terms of what you're, what rate?
Yeah, no, so I don't see the rate there. I'm just saying that, there may be additional unforeseen costs. So my question is that is there like a specific rate that this company has for the unforeseen costs? And is that, if they do, would that rate be comparable to the other bids?
So the way it would work is essentially, we have our budget, and we have, so we essentially put it out to tender. The tender results come back in. Anything between, the tender results and what our budget is kind of your buffer. In terms of the contractors, they may look at certain projects, and again, obviously their goal is to get their foot in the door. Is there a risk associated with going with the low bidder? Certainly, in terms of, are they sharpening their pencil a little bit more than the other contractors? That's possible. But we do have on-site inspections. We have rules that we follow, specifications, that it's not an open book in terms of, or an open wallet in terms of extras. We have worked with this contractor before. They were fair to us, and we had good working relationship with them. So we don't foresee that as being an issue for this project or this contractor in particular. Hopefully that answers your question.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great, seeing no further questions. I just need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Cadwell will move, and Councillor Sharp seconding. Moved by Councillor Cadwell, seconded by Councillor Sharp. Resolved that report DPW 20-12 for contract PWC 20-02-320002 for the 2020 hot mix resurfacing program be received, and that the low bidder, Associated Paving and Materials Limited, be awarded the contract in the tendered amount of $603,865, including HST, and further that the mayor and town clerk be authorized to execute the contract documents. All in favor? It's a recorded vote. Councillor Bothwell?
Yay.
Councillor Bothwell is yay. Councillor Dunstall? Councillor Dunstall is a yay. Councillor Frake?
Yay.
Councillor Frake is a yay. Councillor Cadwell?
Yay.
Councillor Cadwell is a yay. Councillor Ritchie?
Yay.
Councillor Ritchie is a yay. Councillor Sharp?
Yay.
Councillor Sharp is a yay. Councillor Vane?
Yay.
Councillor Vane's a yay. Councillor Vardy? It's a yay. Councillor Vardy is a yay. And myself, I'm a yay. So that is carried. Up next, we have award a contract PWC 20-06 440 047 2020 water main rehabilitation on Central Avenue, Marlow Avenue, Baker Road, South Robinson Street, and North Court. Questions? Seeing no questions, we just need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Sharp. Moved by Councillor Frake, seconded by Councillor Sharp. Resolved that report PW 20-10 for contract PWC 20-06 440 047 for 2020 water main rehabilitation be received, and that the low bidder, Catalina Excavating Incorporated, be awarded the contract in the tendered amount of $1,898,941, excluding HST, be approved further, and that the mayor and town clerk be authorized to execute the contract documents. And it's a recorded vote. Councillor Bothwell?
Yay.
Councillor Bothwell is a yay. Councillor Dunstall?
Yay.
Councillor Dunstall is a yay. Councillor Frake?
Yay.
Councillor Frake is a yay. Councillor Cadwell?
Yay.
Councillor Cadwell is a yay. Councillor Ritchie?
Yay.
Councillor Ritchie is a yay. Councillor Sharp?
Yay.
Councillor Sharp is a yay. Councillor Vane?
Yay.
Councillor Vane is a yay. Councillor Vardy?
Yay.
Councillor Vardy is a yay, and myself is a yay, so that is carried. Up next, we have the ride-on wide area mower quotation. Questions? Councillor Frake?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, when we originally discussed this at the Parks meeting some time ago now, it sounded like a good idea at the time. Things have changed dramatically since then. We're now in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic. We need to watch our cost very closely. And I'm thinking that we can afford, I don't think we can afford to buy such a Cadillac or any piece of equipment of that price at this point in time. I know we have a mower now that has got I think it's on a 15-year lifespan. It's still working as far as I know. But I would be very keen to strike this from spending this amount of money for this lawnmower this year, and maybe want to revisit it next year. But I think that it's a cost that we can probably do without, and I welcome the other folks on council to hopefully think the same way. And it's an opportunity to save ourselves 72 grand, which can be put to better use. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frake. Councillor Sweeney, or sorry, Sarah, do you want to comment on that, or are you okay?
I can let everybody else
All right.
have their
Sure.
comments. I will just quickly say is the quotation was put out before all of these events were going
Yes.
on. It was in our 2019 capital budget and 2020 as well. So there was a bit of a plan already in place, and knowing that these vendors had taken the time to submit their quotations, we wanted to proceed. the funds for this is through the Equipment Reserve Fund, and there is certainly sufficient funds in there to do this as part of our capital replacement program, just to make sure that that's clear.
All right, great. Thanks for the clarification, Sarah. Councillor Vane, you're up next.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a bit to what Sarah just said. We did actually have no problem with this when we brought it before Parks and Rec. The only reason it got deferred was because we were looking for the possibly better warranty, because one of the people on our committee was very familiar with this type of product and suggested we could get a better warranty, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Director Sweeney will confirm we did get a better deal. Whether that was a better warranty or not, I'm not sure. But this item is very much needed. It's been needed for about 2 years. They've been discussing it. The other one, yes, we can take chances and keep repairing it and wasting money, but we can't keep deferring this. This is already in the reserve. The money's there. It can't be used for anything else. So let's just use it.
Thank you, Councillor Vane. Up next, we have Councillor Bothwell.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Jordan. One of the other discussions that came up, well, actually, I'm on the rec committee as well, and I recall that conversation back in September of 2019, and it was deferred. And I thought there was two components to the reason for the deferral. One being, at that time, the model that was picked was a turf something model for about the same amount of price, $72.73. It had a 5-year warranty. The GC Duke model, the Jacobson HP 600 or whatever at the time, had a 2-year. What also transpired, though, I believe at that time, was that there was conversations about moving to the grass cutting services over back to contract services, because the town had undertaken them for the previous last 2 years. But prior to that, since 1995, grass cutting has been done by outside contractors. And the RFP that went out in February 2020 that was just finalized was for a contractor to do all of the parks. And REC received that report in February, and the bidder that was recommended was HS&M out of Millgrove, and the amount was $85K or something like that for them to be contracted to do grass cutting for all parks. And my understanding, and I may be mistaken, but the wording in the report stated that they would be responsible for all parks. What I understand from Director Sweeney in discussions this week is that staff have still undertaken to do the larger parks and the ball diamonds within the town, which 3 or 5 of those then would still be maintained by town staff. So my suggestion was, because we've undertaken a contract with this contractor who has professional grade equipment that can handle all types of fields, that perhaps we need to look at whether they are capable of handling those additional fields as well, which I thought were originally included in the price. And when the budget was discussed, I was looking at whether we were offsetting our internal costs because of the contract costs that we were now incurring. So I think if we can look at revisit that to see whether there's a way to have that incorporated into the contract that we've just I believe awarded to that contractor for grass cutting, then I don't see how I think that we can then not look at making a replacement for this piece of equipment. I think it makes more sense to have the contractor do that service as well, perhaps, and use their equipment. That's just my thought. So I just don't see investing another $72,000 right now in that piece of equipment is maybe the best timing. Thank you.
Director Sweeney, do you have a comment to that?
Sure. A couple of just differences is we have always had our full-time staff cut all of these sports fields and some of the large parks. In some cases, they're the same thing. And so what we did when we did the contract service, so we did the contract services for quite a number of years, as you know, and in the past 2 years, we did it in-house for a variety of reasons. And what we did with this contract was go back to what we were doing before, which is basically what we're not able to really do with the full-time. And it was all done by part-time and casual. And that was why we were able to flip among them as easily as we do. Certainly our sports fields are managed by our full-time staff, cutting the grass as well as top dressing, fertilizing, lining, and all of the other things that they do for sports fields, which are handled a little bit differently, are currently done by full-time. So it wouldn't be as simple as to just switch it over. Anything can be looked at, of course, but most municipalities that I'm aware of, their full-time staff are managing their sports fields.
Thank you, Director Sweeney. Up next, we have Councillor Vardy.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, like when I saw this on the agenda, I have to say my first thought was, what alternate universe did this request come from? I'm sitting here thinking that, like Councillor Bothwell, why don't we contract for these services where they're obviously cost effective with respect to other means? So, if it means, we're doing this just to redeploy staff, maybe we should be looking at how we handle our staffing more appropriately and more cost effectively. I would like to say that, at this time when we don't know our current fiscal situation in the town, we know we're not getting
Councillor
revenue.
Bain, you have a point of order.
First of all, I don't agree with being blocked on the microphone because it doesn't allow us to call out point of order, but this conversation's gone a little bit too far. We're talking staffing issues here. This should be go in session, in camera, not on public, open session. You're talking about full-time jobs that we already have people in. So I suggest we take this in camera if we're gonna have this kind of conversation about staffing and changing.
I'll agree with you on that. I think we'll keep it to the,
If I can continue then, Mr. Mayor?
yeah, as long as you keep it away from staffing.
All right,
Thank
well,
you.
let me just say that I think we need to look at the most fiscally appropriate way to manage this activity. And I think that now is not the time to be making a $72,000 purchase when we don't know the fiscal situation of the town. We know our revenues are going to be down. And even when this whole COVID pandemic is over, people are not going to have the money to be paying for recreation in the way that they did before. So the fiscal situation isn't going to remedy when the pandemic's over. The fiscal situation is going to have a carryover. And so this is not the time, to my mind, to be making this purchase. The other thing is, I just want to highlight that, to say that, well, we've got the money, it's in reserves. Reserves come from the taxpayer. Like, they get put into pockets and we're saving for this or saving for that, but they all come from the same source. So, and we need to be really cognizant about the taxpayer. I mean, we've given them a horrible hike of 13%. So I think we just need to be a little more respectful and a little more prudent in our spending. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy. Councillor Cadwell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jordan. Just a couple comments too, or questions. I understand with this machinery, there's if we order it, there's a 30-day turnaround, which is, to me, that's very good, that we can get the machine as quick as possible. Also, if we don't order it now, if we defer it, are there any guarantees that we will get this this good price, even the warranty that we've been promised right now? So those are my two questions for the director. Thank you.
Sure, I can respond a bit to that. The previous quote that we were looking at was $77,000. It was a 5-year warranty. They were about 77 to 72, and that was without a cab. So we were actually extremely pleased with the pricing on this with a cab, which is a really good improvement from a health and safety perspective. Certainly, if we waited some period of time, the quotation does have a time limitation. So likely we would have to reissue it and we might see that pricing change, definitely. I don't know that for certain, but certainly that is possible. As well as the manufacturing window, yes, that could change as well. I can't give you a definitive answer on that, only to say we would certainly have to go back and have those things be looked at.
Thank you, Director Sweeney. Councillor Sharp.
Thanks, Mayor Jordan. I'm looking for, from staff, is your recommendation to purchase this lawnmower or to defer this lawnmower purchase?
My recommendation is to purchase it.
Thank you.
Councillor Bain.
I just need some clarification from Director Sweeney. I already support this because it's long overdue. But before I ask Councillor Sweeney or Director Sweeney a question, I do have to point out that contrary to what some other people may be trying to imply, all of us are very conscious and aware of the insensitivity to the taxpayer and the taxpayer's money right now. Hence the reason for my motions coming in the next council meeting. But this is a necessity. We have to get this and get moving. We need this. It's not, and the money's already there. It can't be spent on anything else. It's in a reserve fund. It's not something that we can take out and say, oh, the town's short this week. It's already there. It was already accounted for, paid for. So just to let everybody know, we are all equally concerned about the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to ask the question again about the money being in reserve, and I want clarification. So this money that's in the reserve that's earmarked for replacement of equipment, so it cannot be used anywhere else. It has to stay there. I guess that's what I want to know. Because if the money is there and it cannot be spent anywhere else, then I would support purchasing this vehicle. But if it can be used, then I also want to know. I understand that the lawnmower is 15 years old. Is there an opportunity to get another year, 2 years out of it? But yeah, those are the two questions that I have.
Yes, so my understanding is the reserve, unless you change the scope of the reserve, is dedicated for the replacement of equipment, and we forecast all those things over several years. And we are playing a bit of catch up. We're a little bit behind where we want to go, but we're on a good path. And this is one of those items that we need to catch up on. Certainly in terms of a season as well for this year, we fully do it. We hope that even if we can get on the fields, we know that these groups are really anxious to get on these fields. And we're still going to have our 2020 national championship there, as well as our 2021 event. But yes, it is planned ahead of time to place all of these equipment. With the way that we do our equipment, we basically kind of rent it back from ourselves and make sure we have the sufficient funds to replace these items as we're going along. So it is intentionally or sort of set out for this specific type of equipment. Can we get a little bit more time out of the existing one? Well, we've been doing that for quite a while. There certainly just comes a point where you're not making the greatest investment. And the longer we wait to purchase this unit, we fully expect the price just goes up.
Thank you, Director Sweeney. Councillor Cadwell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan. I just want to comment, just from an operational side through Rec Services. Right now, and there'll be a report coming from Mr. Schlang and the senior management team. We're actually there's less staff. There's no casuals being hired, no part-time. So there's actually more work to be done, or more area. I'll use it in parks to be covered by our full-time staff. So, and my understanding, this machine it can do a lot of work, get a lot of grass cutting done in a maybe shorter time frame. So I think it's a good investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cadwell. Councillor Vardy.
Yes, thank you. I just have one final question, and it's partly to Brandon and to Sarah. I understand both areas do grass cutting. Can we not share equipment, or I thought that we were going to look at maybe consolidation of various grass cutting to maximize fiscal prudence. So I guess what I'm wondering is, is there not equipment there that could be used? I'm not saying never, but I'm just saying if it's still working, perhaps this isn't the time to buy it. If we have other options that can carry us through this year.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy. Seeing no further questions. Oh, Councillor Frake, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we keep talking about surplus as if it's just money, loose money out there, waiting for a home. and we're a little bit reluctant sometimes to cut back on cost. And I don't get why we're so reluctant to do that. I mean, this is an unusual time frame. A question for you, Sarah. The money you say is earmarked particularly for equipment replacement, but it's not specifically for lawnmower replacement. It could be for, is it any Parks and Rec or Public Works equipment as well? Or is it just specific to a lawnmower or just specific to equipment related to Parks and Rec? That's my first question.
So we have a parks equipment reserve, and it is for all of a variety of different machinery. And there's a couple, I mean, Stephen could probably define this a bit better as to all the different reserves that exist, but it is, we forecast out the equipment that we need and try to plan accordingly. So it is sort of mapped out and based upon priority.
But is it specifically for Parks and Rec?
The one that we have, yes. The way that we do the reserve accounts, the account that we have is Parks and Rec, and then Public Works has theirs. I'm not sure exactly how many there are. Stephen, again, can answer that better, but the one that we have is for Parks and Rec. And it's, again, just for a tracking purpose that we know that we're accumulating sufficient monies to be able to replace the equipment that we have.
So the money sits in reserve, and if it doesn't get used for a lawnmower, it sits in reserve until something more important comes along, or maybe something that's needed more on an emergency basis, maybe next year. I mean, we don't have to spend the money this year, right? It stays in surplus, it stays in reserve, is that right?
It does get carried over, yes, and we do prioritize the items that we need most.
Okay, I'll be twixt in between here, but I just think that it's, it's an opportunity to save some money, even though it stays in surplus or in reserve, which could be used at a future date for something else. Anyways, I'm wrestling with that a little bit. And anyways, thanks for those answers. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sharp.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to call the question.
Yeah, certainly you can call the question, but I'm just going to add a little bit anyway. With 2020 having the Canadian Softball Championships, and hopefully we will still be able to host them, and having the Canada Summer Games in 2021, I think it's very prudent to have our senior staff who know how to cut diamonds, know what they're doing. And the fact that we have this in reserve, we're replacing a 15-year-old piece of equipment, and the fact that it would just stay in reserves, I think this is a prudent expense, in my opinion, that it's something that will make our fields better. It will be done by senior staff, full-time staff that actually know 100% for sure what they're doing. Contractors tend to be on a time frame. I understand that they still do a good job, but it may not be sports field good. So that's just my final thought on it. So I just need a mover and a seconder for this. Moved by Councillor Sharp, second by Councillor Bain. So moved by Councillor Sharp, second by Councillor Bain. Resolved that the Ride-on Wide Area More quotation report be received for information, and that the quotation from GC Duke Equipment in the amount of $72,250 plus applicable taxes be approved for the purchase of the Jacobson HR 700 cab unit. Recorded vote, Councillor Bothwell.
Sorry, I'm going to pass and say no on this one.
Councillor Bothwell is a nay. Councillor Dunstall.
Yay.
Councillor Dunstall is a yay. Councillor Frake.
I'm going to pass on this as well. I'm going to go nay.
Councillor Frake is a nay. Councillor Cadwell.
In favor? Yay.
Councillor Cadwell is a yay. Councillor Ritchie.
I'm a nay at this time.
All right. Councillor Ritchie is a nay. Councillor Sharp.
I'm in favor. Yay.
Councillor Sharp is a yay. Councillor Bain.
Yay.
Councillor Bain is a yay. Councillor Vardy.
Nay.
Councillor Vardy is a nay, and myself, I'm a yay. So that is carried. Up next, we have The corporate leadership team COVID-19 response update, CAO Schlang. You have the report.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Mayor. I just wanted to say that this report has been authored by the entire corporate leadership team. We all work together on this. There's an echo there. And sorry. Sorry, we just had an echo in the room. We all work together on this, and I really, although we were giving council updates almost daily at some point, we really wanted to show you some of the work we did as we moved along. The emergency, as soon as the World Health Organization advised of the pandemic, shortly thereafter, around March 12th, we set up the EOC up at Station 2. And I have to say that a real shout out to Acting Chief Bill Thompson. When we went up to that Station 2, everything was set up for us. We were ready to go, as well as Kathy McGrath, who's our Shared Services Emergency Operations Center liaison. It was set up, we were ready to go and move forward. We mobilized very quickly as an organization. And, you know, we wanted to sort of talk about this report that we didn't just ensure the safety, while we were ensuring the safety of all our staff, while we're ensuring the safety of our community, we were cost conscious all the way along. Right on March 12th, I have to thank Ms. Bovan from Finance. We set up a separate cost center for everything we were doing related to the pandemic. We mobilized every staff member that was involved in this and tracked costs. And we not only tracked direct costs, but also how much time we were spending on the pandemic. We also worked together on communication. This was an unbelievable, and we're still going through it now. Almost every 2 days, things were changing very early on. We adapted very quickly. When we heard on March 14th, I'm just going through some of the chronology of the report. On March 16th, March 13th, when we heard that some of the parks and rec and culture programs would be seen as non-essential and we'd have to close all our facilities, that was March 14th. We acted very quickly and no longer scheduled work for our part-time work immediately. And I'll talk later about how many employees that impacted. So we made that decision right on March 14th. On March 16th, Sarah Sweeney and the team realized that, you know, since the facilities weren't going to be used, we took the ice out and we, to save costs there. On March 23rd, of course, council decided to, we brought forward to waive some interest charges on late payments. So we were keeping track of things like that. On March 24th was summer registration for leisure programs. We set that up without payment at the time to at least let people get in the queue. And then on March 31st, when we heard from the province that schools were not going to reopen on April 6th, we immediately stopped scheduling and temporarily laid off all the crossing guards. And we've just continued to be very responsive, not only to our community from a health and safety perspective and to our staff, but on a cost-conscious impact. We also, I was so impressed with the organization and the IT team because we had to quickly improvise and innovate the way we do permits, the way we do video conferencing meetings. The team just came together in the way of innovation, which was amazing to see. And then, of course, when the province announced that the 72 groups of essential services, we mobilized and readjusted our workforce that way. When the call came out later to go down to 47 essential services, we modified again and changed the way we worked and moved everything at that time to just focusing on essential services. Nothing discretionary, nothing non-essential. So that was around April timeframe, early April. We realized that we had to mitigate some efforts going into the summer. So we held back the hiring of any summer students, casuals, co-ops, everything possible that both from a public works and a recreation and culture perspective. We held off hiring on any of those positions. And we do see, and both Brandon and Sarah Sweeney looked at, there may be some operational impacts on service levels because we're already a very lean organization. On page 6 of 9, we've listed some items that perhaps the community wouldn't see our responsiveness in the way of, some of the projects and rec and culture. We would probably curtail all floral aspects at this point. In public works, things like traffic studies on Dorchester and Nails, some tree stumping, tree planting, on-demand service for culvert installations and inspections may see reduced service levels. But most of what we were doing in public works is essential and needs to continue, including all the capital projects. So when I just want to summarize some of the staffing impacts, because we did it swiftly and quickly, we didn't always publicize it. So on March 14th, when we made that decision, much earlier than any municipality I've seen, we immediately decided to temporarily lay off 39 part-time staff. So that was on March the 14th. We made that decision. On April 6th, an additional 9 crossing guards were not scheduled anymore. So that's a total of 45 staff impacted. And then on April 13th, when we saw that this was going to continue, we held back all seasonal hiring of 56 positions in parks, recreation, culture, and public works until we could see some normalization of operations. So we moved very quickly in all those aspects. We've also postponed the recruitment of 2 new full-time positions in parks, recs, and culture, the park specialist and the rec programmer. We're postponing that. So all along, we've been tracking, costs and revenue losses as the best we could. And the financial impact of this report, we got a May 1st tax installment due date. And about 2 weeks thereafter, we'll know what impact that has, whether people has paid these installments, so we could have a good idea. We could bring down all our assumptions and really present to you by June 1st what we see as the financial impact of this, both from revenue losses and increased costs. But we've also mitigated a tremendous amount of costs that we want to show you at that time as well, just by the 56 positions we've held back, the 2 full-time, the 45 positions we've temporarily laid off. So we'll also have some savings there to show you to offset some of that. We're also saying that on June 1st, we could look at and provide some options to you on how we would look at some postponement of some of the priorities that you established, postponing them a little later in the year, as well as looking at maybe some service level reductions to ensure that we don't hit a deficit in 2020. So together as an organization and all the corporate leadership team, we're really focused solely on essential services now. There is no discretionary spending. We've done everything possible. We've acted swiftly to mitigate any costs. And I think by June 1st, we can give you a good view of that. And when I look at the collaboration on the report, there's also, the team has just come together like in a very united fashion. In Appendix A, it shows you how we got together in the EOC. It doesn't matter who reports to who, everybody's been working together. I want to thank the mayor. He's been at every meeting with us and worked with us. I want to thank people like Catherine Drury. Her name's not listed on the report, but she's been a real champ for us, and actually is going to head up a sub-team starting to focus on recovery. So while the EOC continues to meet, she's going to meet with people that are actually doing the job and develop a recovery plan, because even when it goes back into phased approach to normalization, it's not going to be business as usual. It'll be a different way we deliver our services. We actually feel there's going to be a lot of heavy lifting in the recovery. I wanted to thank people like Thomas Hodgson, who has spent at least 75% of his time on risk assessment, risk mitigation strategies. And in addition to his current job, Sarah Sweeney, Stephen, Bill Thompson, the entire CLT team, Brandon Wortman is probably spending 50 to 60% of his time in addition to the work that he's doing. And it's just been a real team effort. And all of our staff, that, every 2 days, well, there's a new variable we have to consider. All our line staff, all our customer service staff are taking complaints, our bylaw staff. It's just been a real team effort. And we've done this while we're mitigating costs considerably. I wanted to thank, and Councillor Furtick, a shout out to Ron Tripp, the CAOs across all 13 or 12 municipalities in the region. We meet out every 2 nights. We talk about ways to be consistent, so there's consistent messaging across the board. And I just wanted to, advise the public and council, we've done everything we could possibly do while mitigating costs, and we just wanted your support to continue on this path. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, CAO Schlang. I see we have Councillor Sharp, question or comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to CEO Schlang and the emergency management group. You guys have done an excellent job, and I'm glad that you got started right away. And I know that you guys have put a lot of time in to managing this. So I want to thank you. And the question I have to the town manager is, so some of these costs, for example, the temporary layoffs and the cost, the mitigating that you've done, this is to balance additional costs that we're anticipating or lost revenues. And it's not, can you just explain that?
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Sharp. It's a bit of both. So all the mitigation we're doing to save money, save costs for the public, and is to mitigate revenue losses. Things like interest revenue. We know with interest rates going down, our calculations looking forward predicted a much higher interest rate, as well as interest revenue that we've on March 23rd. We've looked at waiving some interest fees. We're also anticipating that might go on throughout the year. So we've sort of done some probabilities on that. And as far as increased costs, we haven't seen a tremendous amount of increased costs due to the pandemic. The main component is just how much staff are double and triple teaming on this. So it's sort of like the indirect costs, the opportunity costs of many of our staff spending at least half of their time, especially the EOC, on the pandemic. So at this point, we've even tried to curtail the cost of the pandemic, direct cost of the pandemic, as much as we possibly could. So it's mainly towards some revenue losses we're seeing. And we're running probabilities and we're running variations of what we're thinking, what we're seeing. And we actually think that after that May 1st installment date, we can actually reduce our assumptions and really show you that we've got a good plan to mitigate to year end.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing I wanted to just make a comment. I know some of our part-time staff was temporarily let go, and I know some of the part-time staff that we have, well, yes, they're part-time, but some of them have been with the town of Grimsby for 10 years, more than 10 years. And so I understand that that it's difficult for some of them. And I was just wondering, what will be the next step towards bringing that staff back, or will there be any more layoffs?
At this point, we've got everybody working on essential services. So unless the province reduces the essential services list, all our staff are focused on essential services. So, there won't be any more layoffs that I would recommend. As far as bringing part-time staff back, as we flatten the curve and the province starts to relieve us of some of the services, we can start to slowly phase in our services back, and we'd bring in our part-time staff as fast as we could. And also if we maybe need some replacement staff, if people are off sick or so, we would try and bring back our part-time staff as fast as we could as well.
Okay, thank you. Because I know it's difficult. Some of these people, they're laid off, right? And they can get onto the unemployment or the CERB, but it's terrible to see people that have committed a decade of their life, or even people that have committed 3 or 5 years of their life, to be out of work. And So I appreciate all the work that you've done, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Up next, we have Councillor Cadwell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan, and thank you, Mr. Schlang, for your report. I know living fairly close to Town Hall and by there at certain times at night and whatever, the candle is burning late at night for staff. And I just want to say a huge thank you very much to the good work that staff's doing on behalf of the residents of Grimsby, keeping everybody safe, keeping our operations running as efficiently as possible. And I just want another shout out to our CAO from Grimsby Power. I had the opportunity as one of council's representatives for Grimsby Power. The president, Mr. Fernandez, he has just got great things to say about how the relationship with the town and Grimsby Power has moved through this whole pandemic. Just in regards to having a backup office that Grimsby can work out of, and Mr. Schlang and the staff, our senior staff, you guys really stepped up. Grimsby Power was, they were reaching out, they were looking at options, and you guys came up with a great plan. So, and I'm just, just passing on the huge thank you from Grimsby Power. So, great job to town staff, and I know you'll keep up the good work, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cadwell. Up next, we have Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Again, just echoing the same statements that we've heard now from our other councillors, that town staff have done a phenomenal job in pulling together in a very, very short period of time to get on board, to get this, to deal with this crisis. And I think everyone needs to be congratulated for their efforts and continuing to fight the good fight. So thank you. The report is very comprehensive, and I thank the CAO for that, and that we can look forward to some further information the first week of June with some mitigation strategies and suggestions as to where we can look at moving forward for future projections, because I think that's important that we get a grasp of where we're at and where we need to go, so we can make some future decisions based on what those projections look like. What I'm hoping we can also factor into that, I don't know if part of the discussions with the region and with Regional Councillor Furtick on live stream here, it might be helpful if there's any way to reach out to the region to talk about the 250,000 commitment for transit, which was a pilot supposed to have started April 1st, considering that I don't think that contract has been further ratified. It was supposed to come back to municipalities to define the terms of that contract, and I haven't seen that come back to us. We did commit to it, but in practice, now that we're in a position where it doesn't look like it's going to be rolling out as a pilot for this year, there was supposed to be an option for a second year. So I'm hopeful we can reach out to the region to see if we can retain that 250K funds this year, and be looking at that pilot to commence for next year, because I can't see that getting off the road with this current situation we're in. So if there's any way to try to reach out to them in our discussions on deferring funds payout, that would be much appreciated. The second thing I just wanted to ask Mr. Schlang is if on the Appendix A org chart there of the Incident Command Center, there's the Mayor Jordan is at the top with policy, and then yourself is next to it. Is there not a role for council under policy on that org chart? I just wonder if you could clarify that, please.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Bothwell. Yeah, the linkage to council is through the policy director, through Mayor Jordan. That's how how it's set up. So so that's been that communication that goes to you daily or every second day. But that policy side is Mayor Jordan representing council, and he'll report back to council, or we report back at council meetings. We haven't used my delegation of authority at all, other than we might be for a small policy change, but we'll let council know ahead of time. So, yeah.
Yeah, just wondering if we should be included on the org chart though, actually on the org chart under the policy director section.
Counselor, it's always through the mayor. I mean, this is a common, just a common process across Ontario. Because many times we're just working with the mayor, but the mayor represents you at an emergency.
Okay, I just didn't see our place anywhere on this org chart, so I just didn't know as a sub box under it or somewhere relevant to it that council was incorporated in it. There's just no mention. That's all. That's okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask the CAO, how many people have been hired since March 15th? I know about the people that you've laid off, and I appreciate the report and what you've done and what our senior management team has done. It's great. But I'd like to know, how many new hires do we have, whether they be fill-ins or replacements or new full-time people? And I wonder if you could tell me who they are. Thank you.
Yeah, as far as from the management side, I could probably explain that well. So we had an interim HR manager to help us with Kat being on maternity leave. So we had that. We had we've hired. Geez, I'm trying to think who else. Yeah, the procurement manager as well as the accounting senior accountant. But these were all in the base. They weren't in the 2020 budget. They were all coming out of the base that we saved money to spring those people to help finance. And then I'm just trying to think of one other one. There might be one other. Deputy clerk was before March 15th. It was before. So that's it. Very little. We were postponing.
What about has a planning director been hired?
No, because the commitment was to bring it to council for you to meet the person. So there's been no hiring of the planning director yet for my commitment to council.
Good.
So yeah, and as far as that's been it. It's been, and then of course we've held back on all hires for all casuals, all students.
All the seasonal stuff. Okay. All right.
And we held back the 2 new positions that we got approved in the budget for park specialists.
Okay.
We're postponing that.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy. Up next, we have Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our town manager. Thank you for a very comprehensive report. And I know everybody else has so far or thus far has congratulated you and your team. You said they're spending half their time in the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center. Everybody working 40 hours a week?
I should be.
Yeah,
I should be cautious to say that they're not just in the EOC. You know, when they're not there, they're doing other work to prepare for the EOC. Like every night we have a reporting structure. So no, nobody in the EOC is working probably less than 70 hours a week right now. But we're all doing it together. We're all doing it together, and it's not.
And you're getting your regular 2 days off.
I don't think anyone is. Steven's just laughing at me.
Okay, and as Councilor Cadwell said, you're burning the midnight oil. So you guys are really stepping up to the plate, above and beyond. Thank you very much. Just to add to Councilor Sharp's comment about some of the staff that we're not bringing on. I believe that they're all entitled to CERB if they made a minimum of $5,000 last year with us. They can apply for that, and that's support from the federal government for up to 4 months, and they're entitled to that. So that'll ease the pressure. Some of them are, of course, looking to make money to pay for tuition fees, those kinds of things. So this is something that's really been helping a lot of people that have found themselves out of work, and it's very useful. So we're not not bringing staff on who are going to have to suffer the consequences. There is a safety net out there to help everybody at this point in time. So it's kudos to your team there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dunstall. Up next, we have Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you to the mayor. I too want to thank you very much for this report. The leadership you've shown and the amount of work that's gone into to the decisions that have been made will not only help us in the recovery phase, but will help us for a long time. I also want to thank all the staff that have their names on this report and that worked hard on this report with you. And but I'm also concerned about some things such as Councillor Dunstall said, the 70 hours, 80 hours a week, and the burnout rate that could happen to some of our staff. And so I just hope that that's being monitored closely, because if they're burned out, you know, some of our essential services may fall behind. And I also want to sit there and encourage for to us to hire our director of planning sooner than later, as there's some things that I would like to see and look at to plan for the recovery and bring some thoughts and ideas forward to council to look at some things that might be able to happen for us. We have some capital projects, we have some infrastructure projects that hopefully we can look at in the future. And if we have the right people in place and we can plan for it, we already had the federal government state that, or not state, but the reports are out there that they're going to put lots of money into infrastructure and capital projects to try and boost the economy when this comes to the recovery phase. And we need to have our projects, infrastructure projects, ready to go for when that happens, because if they're not ready to go, we'll just fall further behind. But I want to thank you for this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Bain.
First of all, CAO Schlang, I'm not going to berate it like they do at the Oscars and all that. I just want to say thank you to you and all the staff. I know how hard you guys are working and I appreciate it. I do share Councillor Ritchie's concerns though about the burnout. I just want to make sure that people are getting a day off at least during the week, and that we will compensate these people later for the time that they put, the extra time they put in. I also want to follow up. I understand that we are short a couple of people in water department, and we're still waiting to hire the planning manager. I want to ensure those are going to be happening soon, because I know with the water department, as we were told when we were initially brought on, that should the water go bad and we've done something to delay proper hiring or proper filtering or whatever, we can be criminally charged as counselors. So I just want to ensure that you're maintaining whatever and still moving forward with the things that we need. And things that we've already approved. So I realize this is your position, not ours. So I just want to ensure that we're still moving forward. That's all. Thank you.
CAO Schlang, comment?
Yes, we've got a key hire that we're in the process of doing on the water sewer side. It doesn't affect the levy. It's a critical service that we need someone there, and we're very close to closing on that. The director of planning, I wanted to make sure that I met the commitment to introduce the individual to you, so I want to set that up soon. And yeah, because the recovery phase we think is going to be a lot of heavy lifting. That's why we set up a sub team, more of the people actually doing the work. Catherine Drury is going to help us with that to start to spread the workload, because this is not sustainable, but we're doing what we need to do. It's a lean organization to begin with, and because we've dropped a lot of the part-time, we don't have a lot of bandwidth. So we're going to start to spread the work out across the corporation better.
Thank you, CAO Schlag. I just want to thank both the CAO and senior staff. Oh, I see Councillor Frick has his hand up. Councillor Frick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too would like to go on record to thank everyone on the EOC team who've done an absolutely fabulous job. I know you've been burning the midnight oil. I know you've spent a lot of time, personal time, on this unfortunate event. Great report. Really comprehensive. Well done. It needs a little more review because there's a lot in it. I'll be interested to see what your recovery plan will be. I'm also interested in seeing all of those infrastructure project plans that Kevin Ritchie was talking about. That would be very interesting as well. So I assume there's something in the works that you've got some plans around that to show us what type of infrastructure plans and grants and so on and so forth that we plan to move forward. Yeah, there's one query I had, Mr. Schlange, and that I'm trying to understand. On page 5 of your report, in paragraph 2, I just wanted to understand what the last line meant. While this work is important for our corporate COVID-19 response, it is also developing some excellent resources that can be incorporated into the general emergency planning compendium. Can you explain to me what that means?
Yeah, because the team worked on this together, I've just got to read the couple sentences above that. Ensure to maintain the depth support needed to ensure. Oh, yeah, because we're building, the business continuity plans. Like we're looking at all our priorities across every division. And this will be an excellent document for almost anything we do going forward. Like it shows what your priority tasks are versus your A, B, C tasks. So it's going to be a tremendous resource document, not just for a pandemic, but anytime we have any type of disaster. So we're really building a great foundational piece for us to work on for any situation that hits Grimsby in the future. So it's more of a resource database that we're working on.
Thank you for that. One last thing. Up to this point in time, is there anything different you would have done or would do if you had to go back a month?
I would say probably the thing I'm always more on the positive side. The thing we did the best is March 14th, we reacted right away from a cost mitigation point of view. Again, I can't praise Chief Thompson enough. The EOC Center has been a fantastic place for us to work. So I haven't really seen anything different other than perhaps maybe set up a sub-team a bit earlier, Councillor, because the EOC and we're doing all the work and all the tracking and maybe set up a few more sub-teams a bit earlier. We thought of that last week and we're assigning Catherine Drury, and we'll probably, do a few more of that, spreading out the workload a bit more across the corporation. Probably should have done that a bit earlier. Thank you.
Good feedback. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, CAO. And again, I just wanted to thank you for this report and especially thank senior staff who really put it together. And also, I really wish we would have held off on backfilling some of these positions. I understand the water is an essential service. I was on council when the Walkerton disaster happened, and we've come a long way with water since then. But just some of these big ticket infillings, I really think we could have waited until we saw where our bottom line was on what the costing has been through this pandemic. And CAO, I just wondered if we are going to see something where we can get some type of numbers of what it's cost us. I certainly know that the region has already said that it's cost $9 million so far for the region. So I would like to see our numbers too. And I just wondered if you think that there may be a report coming up. I would certainly like one.
Yeah, definitely. Through you, Mayor. Definitely June 1st. We feel we'll have a couple weeks to, as we get more data on what's happening on that installment on May 1st. We'll definitely have a pretty good report with some assumptions in there, Mayor, but by June 1st. And we'll run the modeling to July 1st, thinking we won't get back to normal till July 1st, as well as to September 1st, because you have different services that you may not have to continue in July and August that may save us some money. So yeah, we'll have those probably, assumptions and some numbers for you.
Great. I look forward to seeing some numbers. I just seeing no further discussion. Just need a mover and a seconder for this. I see Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Vane. Moved by Councillor Ritchie, seconded by Councillor Vane. Resolved that Report Corp 20-03 dated April 20th, 2020 be received and that staff be supported to continue forward with the corporate COVID-19 response as set out within this report. Recorded vote, Councillor Bothwell.
Yay.
Councillor Bothwell is a yay. Councillor Dunstall.
Yay.
Councillor Dunstall is a yay. Councillor Frake.
Yay.
Councillor Frake is a yay. Councillor Cadwell.
Yay.
Councillor Cadwell is a yay. Councillor Ritchie.
Yay.
Councillor Ritchie's a yay. Councillor Sharp.
Yay.
Councillor Sharp is a yay. Councillor Bain.
Yay.
Councillor Bain's a yay. Councillor Vardy.
Yay.
Councillor Vardy is a yay, and myself is a yay, so that is carried. Up next, we have resolution requested by Councillor Vardy. Do I ask for a seconder now? Yeah, and a seconder on that, Councillor Frake. Whereas the World Health Organization declared a global COVID-19 pandemic on March 11, 2020, and is continuing until further notice, whereas the province of Ontario declared a state of emergency on March 17, 2020, which is continuing until further notice, with some estimates until at least July 2020, whereas the province of Ontario on March 24, 2020 declared that all non-essential businesses be closed until further notice, whereas many local businesses may face financial hardships as a result of these closures, which may impact their viability and in return will reduce commercial tax revenue in the town of Grimsby, whereas many Grimsby residents will be negatively financially impacted by these measures, including reduced income and job losses, whereas town of Grimsby revenues will be negatively impacted by parks, recreation, and cultural closures, whereas the financial impacts of these measures on residents may negatively affect the town of Grimsby revenues even after these emergency measures have been lifted, be it resolved that the town of Grimsby implemented immediate hiring freeze for all new and replacement staff, and that all discretionary and contract spending be frozen until time as such a fulsome report on the future state of the town's resources can be prepared and considered. Comments? Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. I brought this forward because, we don't live in a vacuum. And I know that other cities, as well as private sector companies, are actually, reducing their salary expenditures by 10 and 20%, including counselors. I got a call today from a resident who had been laid off, and he was quite concerned about, how is he going to pay for everything, given that even with the government assistance, it was very tenuous. So what I wanted is us, before we made any discretionary expenditures, we get a sense of what the town's fiscal picture is. Now, I understand from CAO Schlang, he said we'll have that June 1st. So I think, and what I'd like to introduce in this motion, is that we not make any purchases or any more hirings until we know our fiscal, at least some sense of a fiscal projection of where we're at and how we're going to be impacted financially. I personally do not want to have another 13% tax increase. I mean, I didn't want this one, and I don't think it's fair to go to the taxpayers again to pay this bill. So it means we really have to tighten our belts this year, because we know we're not going to get the revenues that we would normally get. And I'm also quite concerned, for instance, it was just passed that we're going to purchase a lawnmower for $72,000. And if I had to decide between a lawnmower to replace one that's old but still working and doing the planning, the heritage planning study for Main Street West. It's the planning study. That's a greater priority when the other can be deferred. Whereas the planning study, you know, if we defer that, we're putting some of the future of Grimsby in jeopardy. And so I'm quite concerned about making these, you know, these sort of piecemeal decisions in isolation, when really what we need is like the, you know, let's stop everything, get a fulsome picture of where we're at, what the projections are, so then we can prioritize, you know, what are those things that are most important for the town. So what I'm asking here is that, not that it's an indefinite freeze or indefinite don't spend any more money, but until, if you look at the last line of the motion, until we have a fulsome projection of where we're at, that we not spend money for the next couple of months until we know where we're at. And to me, that's just responsible fiscal management and responsible organizational management. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy. Councillor Bain?
I just, a couple of things. First of all, since none of us are really municipal managers, I'm going to leave my vote with the town manager to make the right decisions, as he and the team has done so far, and not try and second guess him or tell him how to do his job. I think that he's well aware of what we can and cannot hire, or what we can and cannot afford to buy right now. So I'll put my faith in him. And that's where my vote is going to go, because to take a comparison, like something that's coming from a reserve fund to replace an old piece of equipment, and to compare it to a useless study where half of the street is not even heritage.
Point of order. I don't think you can, I take offense to you calling that study useless.
Well,
I think that's completely out of order.
So, you know what? You can't pick and choose who you defend. Let's be fair here. You know, with all due respect, it was raised by another councillor. You didn't stop them. I should have a right to reply to it.
Yeah, but what I disrespect is your phrasing it as useless. I feel that maybe I will certainly be much more eloquent, and I wouldn't be insulting.
That's fair.
So.
With the Main Street study, as I've said from the beginning, less than half the properties in that section are heritage properties, and we're spending a lot of money. I've had more emails on why we're doing the studies. Now, the Grimsby Beach one, I have defended tooth and nail, because we must have that one, but the other one, no. So I just think we got to stop these comparisons. If somebody wants to bring a motion, that's fine. Let us vote on it, but don't start attacking other things that have already been done. This attack is causing this council more grief than you can imagine. Not one of these members of council right now is liked by the public. Some of them may think you are, but you're not. We're getting killed because we keep talking petty stuff. Let's stay on point. If Councillor Vardy wants to bring forth a motion, that's fine. Then let's talk about that motion. I will not support it because we have a town manager. That's his job. It's not ours. He knows what he can do and what he cannot do. He knows what his budget is. We're just councillors. We're not here to tell him how to run his business. We've got to stop that. End of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Up next, we have Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I had a couple comments. One, I just wanted to clarify. Councillor Vardy said that she did not want the 13% increase, and but she voted in favor of. So that vote was passed. We did it once at the Committee of the Whole, and then we ratified it at Council on February 18th was the Committee of the Whole, and March 2nd was the Council. So to make a statement that for a councillor to say that they didn't want it, when they voted in favor of it, and so we all as a council approved the budget, and it was approved by a majority of council. So one councillor can't question the total will of council, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think the Councillor Vardy voted in favor of the approval of that budget, and it would have been both times, on the 18th at Committee of the Whole and when we ratified the budget. That was a long meeting, but So you can't pick and choose, and you can't make statements later to say, I didn't want that. The other thing it was Councillor Vardy's comment too, is about the lawnmower versus the Main Street study. So maybe she's misunderstanding the way that our reserves work, but like, it's like this. So say a lawnmower costs $100,000, right? And it lasts for 10 years. So we put $100,000 a year away so that in 10 years we can replace that lawnmower. And, we can push it out. I think it's been 15 years. And so we can push it out for another year. But like, what I'm getting at is that when we compare the Main Street East study, which is a planning study, to a lawnmower that's purchased from reserves, they're from a different part of the budget. That reserve, it's comparing apples to oranges. We don't postpone the purchase of a lawnmower and then use that money from a reserve for a planning study. So, we say these things. Some of our councillors are saying things, but they're not entirely accurate. And so what I'm getting at here is that councillors, myself included, we're just residents, right? I've lived in town my whole life. Some of these people have lived here for a long time or a little time. We got 25 signatures. We put some signs up for the election. You guys checked our names on the box, but I'm an engineering technologist. I actually write budgets in my professional life, but some of us are firefighters. Others are, but none of us are town managers. To my knowledge, none of us are accountants. Most of us are, that I'm aware, a lot of us are retired, but so what I'm getting at is that we need to rely on our staff for their expert opinion. And we've all just finished saying how Harry Schlang and our town manager has done an excellent job managing during this crisis and this emergency. And I also want to refer to our council staff relationship policy. And it says in section 3.7 that as elected representatives, council members do not have an administrative or managerial role to play in the day-to-day business of the corporation. And so councillors, Vardy and Freak and Bothwell and myself and the rest of council, we are not supposed to bring motions to direct the day-to-day hiring of staff, or we make general policy decisions, and then we assign staff. We pay these guys to do this for us. So far, our town manager has done an excellent job, and so I question whether this motion is allowed, and I won't support it. I think that Harry Schlang has done a great job, and the emergency management group is doing well, and so.
Okay, I think you've gone far enough off topic. So,
Excuse me, Mayor Jordan, I get 15 minutes according to our procedural bylaw.
yeah,
So
but
we're talking
talk
about
about what?
staff, and I'm on topic, guys. So please let me finish. I'm almost done. So what I'm saying is that this decision, hiring staff, which we may need to hire new staff, or letting go of some part-time staff, this is a management decision, not a town council decision. We hire our staff to do this. It's their job, not our job. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I've looked at this motion, and I understand Councillor Vardy's concern, but I really believe that our CAO has the expertise and the knowledge and is there day to day to make good, sound decisions. I understand too, maybe he's backfilled a couple positions, but the day-to-day operation still has to run. It's a $50 million corporation, and it needs people to continue to do their jobs. We have to come out of this recovery with a sound, strong organization, and we can't be running a skeleton crew. And our report that we are expecting from our CAO in June is just the beginning. It's just the beginning. We're going to have to deal with this for a year, 18 months, 2 years. And so we've got to take our time and make sound decisions as we go along. We can't suddenly decide to freeze hiring. Who knows who's going to get sick in the next month? We've already stretched our management team. They're exhausted. If somebody gets sick and we have to replace somebody, we've got to do it. We've got to keep the town running, and we can't tie down the town manager to not be able to make a decision and replace somebody who's now off sick with COVID-19. We can't do that. I won't be supporting this. I understand Councillor Vardy's concerns about the taxpayer. I understand that too, but I can't support this. It's too rigid. Thank you.
Councillor Vardy?
Yes, thank you. I have to say, perhaps my reaction to this is because maybe I'm the only one on council that has managed budgets over $50 million on an annual basis. Maybe I'm the only councillor here. Yeah, save the face, Randy. Thank you. Maybe I'm the only councillor here that has been able to make decisions about having to do a 20% cut in a public health budget, where we're really having to look at priorities. And I have to say, I'm absolutely astounded that all of you are relinquishing, and I won't say all of you, but some of you are relinquishing your responsibility to at least prioritize what is most important, and to at least take stock of what we're doing before we make any more financial commitments. I'm appalled, to be really honest. I'm appalled at the short-sightedness of some of this thinking, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy. I think Councillor Frake had his hand up, then Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few comments about the comments. First of all, we're not just councillors, Councillor Vane. We represent the people of this particular town, and until we are otherwise, we are quite in our rights to speak out on behalf of our constituents. So I think it's unfair to say we're just councillors. In terms of Councillor Sharp's remark about we all approved the budget, yes, we did. We went through it in detail and we approved the items one by one, and we had our opportunity to vote. However, if COVID-19 pandemic was upon us at that time, I'm sure we all would have voted a little bit differently about that budget. So everything is different in time, especially when we end up with a pandemic and an economic meltdown worldwide. So yes, at that time, the budget was what it was for the time it was. Now it's different. In terms of useless studies, just because one of us may think some of these studies are useless doesn't mean they're useless. Our constituents think differently, and we represent them. So let's never forget that. So going back to Councillor Vardy's resolution, yes, maybe we should direct staff to come back with a report, and maybe rephrase the last paragraph there to come back with the report based on what she's trying to do here. Because as you say, as most of you say, our expertise lies with our staff. That doesn't mean there's no expertise on council, as there is. And let's not forget that either. We do, most of us, I think, have some understanding of budgets because we've had to deal with them. So, and we know what cost cutting is all about if you come from the corporate world. So budgets change. So right now we're looking at a budget that could be a little bit different. Our constituents have reached out to us so many times, and so many of them over the past month and a half, and are asking us, begging us to look at other ways in which we can help them because they're unemployed and they are just, businesses are closing down and so on and so forth. So I think we should direct staff from this particular resolution to look at how we might be able to look at our staff again, look at other ways we might be able to cut costs, and maybe give it back to the people in some form or other. I'm not saying we will do that or can do that, but I certainly think it's worth a damn try because that's what we're supposed to be doing. So let's try and do that. So I will support Councillor Vardy's report. Minor change maybe, but I certainly will. And I think we're all should be prudent, and I think we should all take the responsibility that we were actually voted for. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, as I listen to some of these comments, I'm very offended and appalled to hear some of these comments that thinking that some of us as councillors are nearsighted. I mean, here we are, we have a pandemic. We know that some of our staff is doing burnout. You know, yeah, they talk about social distancing, 6 feet. MIT has done a report. It can travel 27 feet. It's airborne. So what's going to happen if some of our staff get sick that's doing essential services and you know what, and they're out for a month? They're going to need to replace some people, whether it's part-time, whether it's not. And you know what, and so, you know what, I'm offended that people think that we're looking very nearsighted. We have multiple things that could happen. And we just went and looked at a report from our CEO and all our senior staff to say what a great job they've done of cutting and not doing discretionary spending and making the appropriate moves to put us in a better position down the road for the impacts of this COVID-19. I will not be supporting this motion because of all these things. Yes, I understand that our residents are hurting. And unfortunately for us, we don't have a lot of financial resources as a municipality to do this. That's why we need to continue to lobby our provincial and federal government like other mayors are doing or other municipalities are doing for possible funding to municipalities to deal with some of this stuff, for commercial rent assistant programs, for all these things. We need to be their voice and lobby these different forms of government to get them the assistance they need. Unfortunately, we do not have the financial resources to do these things. So I will not be supporting this motion. I think that by tying our CEO's hands in case things happen, he's shown, in my opinion, a lot of responsibility, and he's been very responsible with the taxpayers' dollars in regards to making the appropriate moves when need be. He was one of the first individuals that made cuts back on March 14th, before any municipality even talked about doing things. Before the province, I believe it says here, the province declared a state of emergency on March 17th. So even before the province declared a state of emergency, you know what? He did things in place to put us in a better position. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Bothwell?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I think that this motion basically just reaffirms the actions that the CEO has taken, and it's because the report in the agenda tonight kind of came forward unsolicited. It was great, it's very helpful, but the motion was brought forward prior. And I think that it was brought forward prior to understanding the comprehensive statements that have been made in the CEO's report. So it's basically just a reaffirming motion that council is saying that these are important measures that we need to take. And the CEO's report is just is showing that those are happening, but it's showing council giving the policy direction by this motion. So I see, and it is only temporary. I see that as Councillor Vardy mentioned, we are expecting June 1st to have a report. So it's a period of a month that we're just saying this is to reaffirm the actions that the CEO is basically already taking. But it also allows for that press pause sort of moment where we can think about it. I had another statement and it slipped my mind, sorry, but I'm supportive of it in that sense. Though the other option, sorry, the other thing I was thinking was that irregardless of this motion, the CEO has the delegation under the Delegation of Authority and the Emergency Act that we've just declared, that if he felt there was something that had to be done for the safety and security of the town, he could enact it anyway. So regardless of this motion, if he had to move forward with an emergency hire or an emergency action, he would have that authority, as I understand, to do anyway. So this is more of a reaffirming motion of council that this is the actions that we're looking forward to taking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Councillor Cadwell?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan. I'm not going to harp on this. I do support the report that came from our CAO. I thought it was a very good report. The report, as the CAO mentioned, was not just him. It was all of the senior management team who we just finished a few minutes ago complimenting such a great job they're doing. Now to me, this motion has wording in it that I didn't hear or read in this report at all. So I will not be supporting the motion. I look forward to another report coming from the EOC team and our town manager too. So I'll stop there.
Councillor Bain, further comment?
I just want to call the question, please.
Yeah, but we need 2/3 to call the question. Yeah, you do. We didn't clarify that before, but you need 2/3 to call the question. Everyone's given a chance to speak already. We don't need 2/3, so the question is called. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake. Whereas the World Health Organization declared a global COVID-19 pandemic on March 11, 2020, and is continuing until further notice, where the province of Ontario declared a state of emergency on March 17, 2020, which is continuing until further notice with some estimates until at least July 2020. Whereas the province of Ontario on March 24, 2020 declared that all non-essential businesses be closed until further notice, whereas many local businesses may face financial hardships as a result of these closures, which may impact their viability and in return reduce commercial tax revenue to the town of Grimsby, whereas many residents will be negatively financially impacted by these measures, including reduced incomes and job losses, whereas the town of Grimsby revenues will be negatively impacted by parks, recreation, and cultural closures, whereas the financial impacts of these measures on residents may negatively affect all of town of Grimsby revenues even after these emergency measures have been lifted. Be it resolved that the town of Grimsby implement immediate hiring freeze for all new and replacement staff, and that all discretionary and contract spending be frozen until such a time as a fulsome report on the future state of the town's resources can be prepared and considered. We have a recorded vote. Councillor Bothwell?
Yay.
Councillor Bothwell is a yay. Councillor Dunstall?
Nay.
Is that a nay?
Yes, nay.
Okay.
Nay.
Councillor Dunstall is a nay. Councillor Frake?
Yay.
Councillor Frake is a yay. Councillor Cadwell?
Nay.
Councillor Cadwell is a nay. Councillor Ritchie?
Nay.
Councillor Ritchie is a nay. Councillor Sharp?
Nay.
Councillor Sharp is a nay. Councillor Bain?
Nay.
Councillor Bain is a nay. Councillor Vardy?
Yay.
Councillor Vardy is a yay. And myself, I'm a yay. That is defeated. Up next, we have a resolution by Councillor Frake, seconded by, we need a seconder here. Councillor Vardy. Whereas municipal governments such as Grimsby face unprecedented financial challenges imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic, which will impact the balancing and maintaining of the 2020 budget and will potentially affect the expansion of future services and facilities in a way that is fiscally unsustainable. Whereas Grimsby's tax revenues are directly dependent on a vibrant economy, which is made up of property taxes received from businesses, landlords, and residents, which will be negatively impacted from the economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, whereas the business base in Grimsby is made up mostly of small and medium-sized businesses such as restaurants, pubs, personal services, etc., who make major contributions to the local economy, through employment, tourism, retail sales, etc., which are currently shut down and may never reopen, thus decreasing the future of Grimsby's tax revenues. Whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has caused and will cause more considerable health and economic disruptions for an indeterminate period, and non-essential businesses of Grimsby either directly or through their landlords pay business property taxes at 2 to 3 times the residential rates and have been mandated to shut down, making it inappropriate for the town, Niagara Region, and Ontario Ministry of Education to be collecting any taxes during the mandated shutdown period. Thus, their opportunity to earn income to enable them to pay taxes has been taken away by government, who also want to collect them. Whereas our local Grimsby businesses are now faced with a shutdown, not of their choice, will have many other financial hardships to solve. But this would be a significant step in ensuring a resurgent retail economy necessary for the vibrancy and revenues of the town. Whereas the future consequence for Grimsby and Niagara Region of not providing relief to these non-operating enterprises is that many will not reopen and the local economy will be crippled for years. Thus, what we do today or don't do will have a future impact on Grimsby's future tax revenue. Therefore, be it resolved that town staff perform an impact study of the effects of COVID-19 on the shortfall of future businesses and property tax revenues from the merchants of Grimsby, and furthermore to investigate any potential assistance we can offer local merchants and service enterprises as it's appropriate that business be charged taxes for the period they are shut down. Discussion, Councillor Vane.
I think, and I'm only starting quoting a Facebook post here from the president of the DIA, in which he stated the towns, and I'm ad-libbing here, have done enough. We are not in a position to start giving away. We're sitting here complaining we don't have money. So the province, I've said this to many, many businesses who have reached out and said things, the province and the federal government's the ones that are giving money right now for businesses. We don't have it. We can't bankrupt the town to make ourselves look good, for the next election. We have to do what's responsible. And that means sticking the course and going forward, helping people with the new help of the new economic development officer, helping business people to get the financing and the loans. I spoke to one business person today who got the loan. It's going to carry them through from the federal government. 25% of that loan is non-repayable if they pay it back in 2 years or 18 months or whatever it is. So you know what? I think the town is doing everything it possibly can at this point. The region just put out a report and explained, that what's happening to businesses and how they're being hurt. We know how they're being hurt. The town staff, we've just heard they're working 3 times their shift, and we're going to ask them to do a report to tell us something we already know. I do not support this. Thank you.
There we go. Technical difficulties. Thank you, Councillor Vane. Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I think that Councillor Vane has not completely read this resolution in its entirety and understands it. There's 2 parts to it. One is that I'm asking staff to look at how we might help some of our local businesses a little more. It's pretty clear. I've also asked staff to look at how, if businesses close down in this town and can't pay property taxes and other taxes to us, how is that going to affect our revenues? And if by any chance there's another way we can help businesses in this town to survive, let's look at them. Let's ask staff to find some other solutions potentially that's out there for them to look at. The EDO, and you keep going back to this, EDO is not going to save the world. It's a person. It's one person who doesn't have a bag of money, and he's going to come in here green and won't know exactly where he's going to have to start. In the meantime, people like our own Councillor Dunstall is out there looking for some ways to survive. And he's not the only one, I'm sure, that's suffering through this. He's one small business in many up in this town. So I'm asking staff to find look at how they might find other ways to help businesses in this town. By helping the businesses in this town, we help our bottom line because they pay taxes. If they shut down, they don't pay taxes. If they shut down, we don't get tourists to bring to this town. That's what I'm saying in this. Read the resolution, understand the resolution. I'm asking staff to look at this in a very positive way and find some ways in which we can, maybe some other ways we haven't looked at now. If it's taxes, deferring taxes of the month, as Councillor Vane put in one of his own resolutions, which is a motion for next time around, let's do that. We owe it to the taxpayers and we owe it to the merchants of this town to try to give them a little bit of focus. And let's look at that. Let's get our staff to look at how we might find ways to do this. That's what I'm saying. So for us not to pass this resolution, shame on us. So I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And hopefully everyone on council has some positive thoughts around what I'm trying to do here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frake. Councillor Vardy?
Yes, thank you. I would just like to, I don't know, endorse Councillor Frake's comments. All we're asking here is to, understand what the impacts that this is going to have on business and look at ways to see how we can help business. Like, to me, this resolution is a no-brainer. Why wouldn't we want to help our businesses in any way that we can? And also to get a good sense of what are the impacts this is having on business. I mean, they're important components of our town, as well as residents. So, to me, this one's a no-brainer. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy. Councillor Cadwell?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan. And again, I'm just reading through the last paragraph again, and I know that in June, the report coming from our CAO and our emergency team management people I'm sure it'll incorporate a lot of this information too. So yeah, I think there is a need that we get some information for the business people. There's a lot of good things going on for the business people. The region has they've come up with some initiatives. They've got a website that you can go on. It's openinniagara.ca. There's good things going on, and people for the business people. Nancy Simon through GDAC now. GDAC is going to be reaching out to 10 businesses per week. A lot of the committee members have really stepped up to this initiative, to this charge, to help out too. So yeah, I think anything we can do to definitely, and I do want to always support the businesses. So I will be supporting this at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Cadwell. Councillor Bothwell?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I think Councillor Cadwell touched on a lot of things I was going to mention as well. Thank you, Councillor Cadwell, that we are looking forward in June to a report anyway, which I think this type of information will be very helpful in that on the impacts to the business taxes and property taxes, and as well any ways that we can look at supporting our small businesses, especially in the downtown, and whether or not there's some innovative solutions or thoughts that our staff might have. I mean, it's a great way to get that brought forward. If there's something within the CIP for downtown, for instance, where there's a way to reach out for any kind of specialized government funding or grants or something. So there just might be avenues that we haven't thought of that this motion is going to help bring that information forward to council. So, and I appreciate all the work of the GDAC and the committees reaching out to actually talk to the business to find out what it is they need, because I think we have to get out there and actually get out there and speak to them, and that's great news. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. So I too, as a member of GDAC, always want to support our businesses, and I can appreciate the motion, and I almost think that it came, it's like super early when I look at it for this motion in a little bit, because like we're looking at property taxes and from some of these businesses. And the federal government just last week announced a program, initiative that they want to start called the Commercial Rent Assistance Program, where they'll help it out. But the unfortunate thing is the federal government has all the money and the legislation sits in the hands of the province. So they need to work together to get that accomplished. Now, I also sit there and say that maybe there's some other things we can do, but we are financially a little bit tied with what we do, because we can't budget for a deficit. So right now we've counted on all of those property taxes to be part of our budget, and we won't know what the impacts are. So like I said, we put this study, if we were to go into this and do this, we have a report coming in June, which will help us out. May 1st, taxes are due, but we've also passed a motion to not charge any penalties. And if there's no repercussions to penalties or anything like that, we might actually get some false data, because people may hold back and not pay their property taxes on May 1st because there's no penalty. So I appreciate the motion. I'm not going right now. What I would ask is Councillor Frake and I believe Councillor Leanne. I think they've moved the motion and seconded it. I would ask them that they possibly defer it for a little bit of time, as many things are happening, including the June 1st report. But that being said, if they choose not to do it, I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. So with this motion, and Councillor Freak said that there's two parts to the motion. So I have two questions. And the first one is, can you clarify what the two parts are? Or could I have a member of staff clarify what two things that they would report on?
Mr. Greninger, do you have an idea, or CAO?
Thank you. I would also probably like some clarification exactly myself on the actual resolution. Based on what I see, the way it's worded, it could be a lot more comprehensive than what I may be thinking. It's asking for an impact study, the effects of COVID-19 on the shortfall of future businesses. Now, is that separate from the impact on businesses compared to just property tax revenues? Because an impact study on businesses, I don't think would be within the scope of a municipality. That would be something more that an economist would do on a larger scale to see what the impact of businesses are. We can report on the impact on property tax revenues from businesses within town. I think a full impact study would require a lot more work and probably a consultant to do, as opposed to just staff. So I'm not sure on what exactly is being asked. And then in terms of investigating any potential assistance, I kind of feel that staff have already done that. We've brought a report to council. We've looked at mitigation measures for residents and businesses. We've suggested and council approved the waiving of penalty and interest on taxes. Again, the town doesn't really have the capacity to provide much more in terms of assistance. I'm not sure. I almost feel that a lot of this has already been done. And again, we can report on property tax revenues, but that won't be available until sometime in June, as we go past some due dates, some milestone dates, and then we can see the actual impact on property taxes. So those are my comments.
Councillor Sharp, I think I might have cut you off earlier there. I think you weren't finished, so we'll go back to you.
I did have two parts to my question. Thank you very much, Mayor Jordan. So those 2 points, and I think that clarification from staff is that part of it has already been done, and that part of it is outside of the scope of the municipality, like to provide an impact study and Councillor Vane made the point that our staff is already working in some cases 70 hours a week. And then, so the other thing I wanted, and this would be back to Stephen, is that part of the resolution talks about lowering taxes for businesses. But the business, so our rates of taxes are set by the region and not the town. So we don't actually have any control. We can't lower taxes can we lower taxes for a group or a business or a single, like, can we lower them only for qualified businesses, or can we it's my understanding that we can't do that. Can you confirm, Stephen?
Yeah, well, first of all, the town does set its own tax rates. The town sets its tax rates, and the region sets their tax rates, and the school board set their tax rates. So the tax rates are derived from the budget and how much we are levying. So we take that amount that we're levying, that approximately $15 million, and then I do some calculations to calculate the tax rate. We can't, once the budget now that is set and the tax rates are approved, I can't then lower taxes. So that's something that we have to consider.
Sorry, I'm just talking about the mill rate, that because the residents and the commercial and the industrial pay different rates.
That's correct, yes. So
we don't set those rates?
I'm sorry?
We don't set those rates.
Yes, I do, yes. And council approves them. The town sets their own tax rates based on the outcome of the budget and how much what the levy is.
I mean the difference between what a resident pays and what a commercial or industrial property pays.
Yeah, we establish those rates, but the difference between the different classes of taxes is established by tax ratio, which is approved by the region.
Okay. So could we lower taxes for certain businesses?
No.
Could we lower taxes for all businesses?
Lower taxes, well, we've approved a budget. The only way to lower would be to reopen the budget.
And then if we did reopen the budget and lower, it would we can't just lower them for businesses, right? Like we have to, our levy. So is this resolution even possible, or is it?
It's part of it is possible. Again, we can report on the impact on tax revenues that we're seeing. Again, it'll be a moving target. We have various installment dates due over the next number of months, right through October. And our next big milestone will be May 1st. Well, we will see, get a good picture of how many residents and businesses have actually paid their taxes. I can just give you a little bit of a heads up. Last Wednesday, we had a tax installment due date for pre-authorized taxpayers. And the good news is that only one of those payments out of a few thousand came back non-sufficient funds. So what that tells me is that so far, residents have been able to pay their taxes. We also had a water due date as well. And I think there was only a couple of NSFs with water. So again, that's good news. So cash is flowing into the town. Will that change? It's possible as we get deeper into this, absolutely. And those are the impacts that I will be looking at and trying to provide estimates for council.
Mayor Jordan, while I still have the floor, I would like to make a resolution to, I support this, but I'd like to make a resolution to defer it. And if there's someone who would second that, I would like a resolution to defer this motion, and we can bring it back maybe in June, or staff can give us some input since we're already doing these studies and we already have some. Anyhow, I'd like to make the resolution to defer.
I don't have a problem with deferring, but I'd like to hear the rest of
printed it
the
off. Do you want to
speakers
look at it?
first.
No, you're not allowed to question after.
So we'll go through the speakers list and then we'll talk about deferring. Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you. Your
Point of
Worship.
order.
No, point of order.
Point of order.
It's defer is,
You have to vote on it, yeah.
No, you don't.
Point of order.
Don't we have to? We have to go through this. Whoever hasn't talked on the issue, we still have to go through. And Councillor Dunstall has not spoken.
Thank you.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you. Yeah, I want, well, it's a very comprehensive motion. I think I've used that word already before with the town manager's report, and I understand where we're trying to go here. An impact study sounds very comprehensive, and as our treasurer's already indicated, I don't think we have on staff to be able to do something like that. And I don't know.
I don't see it
I
anymore.
think we're being a little premature too. We just haven't got enough evidence yet to know what direction to go. It's a little early in the whole process, and I'd like to. But I'd like to know if Councillor Frake would like to maybe reword the motion so that it has its continuity is a little different, and maybe we could vote on it that way instead of deferring it, because I think we're all getting a gist that this is a good thing to try and do. It's almost like trying to look into a crystal ball and try and figure things out. It's really tough though. Councillor, I was hoping to hear from Councillor Frake, since it's his motion, to see if he's got anything to add to it. Councillor Frake, can he speak on it?
Yeah, I don't think he can because he's already spoke on it. So we're just preparing Councillor Sharp's motion to defer. Right. Yeah, didn't he speak right at the very start? All right, moved by Councillor Sharp, and who was the seconder on that one? I didn't see. Councillor Vane was the seconder. Moved by Councillor Sharp, second by Councillor Vane. Resolved that resolution regarding the study impact of business tax revenues be deferred. Recorded vote, of course. Councillor Bothwell?
Nay.
That's a nay. Councillor Dunstall?
Nay.
It's a nay. Councillor Frake?
Nay.
It's a nay. Councillor Cadwell?
Nay.
It's a nay. Councillor Ritchie?
Nay.
It's a nay. Councillor Sharp?
Yay.
Councillor Vane?
Yay. I like it, yay.
Councillor Vane's a yay. Councillor Vardy?
Nay.
Councillor Vardy's a nay, and myself, I'm a nay, so that's defeated. The original resolution, Councillor Frake, did you want to comment now that you can on the other comments, and then
Yeah,
we'll get back to the speakers list after that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've listened to the rest of my colleagues, and I don't want to defer it because I think deferring it just makes it later, and the later it waits for this to be done, the worse things get in town in terms of our businesses. So this needs to be done early, not late. That's for sure. Looking at Councillor Dunstall's suggestion that we narrow this down to property taxes, yes, that was what I meant, to be very honest with you. I know it was probably broad in the resolution, and I realize we can't do an economic impact study, but certainly as it relates to taxes. So the two parts that I want to clarify with Councillor Sharp, there's two parts. Yeah, there's the part that looks at our property taxes and the impact from not having X number of businesses in town. And the second part is how we might be able to help our businesses going forward to survive. So there's two pieces to it. Hopefully that clarifies anything in that resolution. It's certainly meant to be positive, and it's certainly meant to be all-inclusive in terms of our businesses in town. So I just hope that we can come to some kind of general consensus that we move this forward and get a study, and maybe we can find some creative ways of helping our businesses. I know I don't have all the answers, but maybe our staff can come up with something that's workable. And I don't know what that is, but I'm hoping we'll find something. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frake. Since we've all spoke on it, I'd just like to call a question right now. Moved by Councillor Frake, seconded by Councillor Vardy. Whereas municipal governments such as Grimsby face unprecedented financial challenges imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic, which will impact the balancing and maintaining of the 2020 budget and will potentially affect the expansion of future services and facilities in a way that is fiscally unsustainable. Whereas Grimsby's tax revenues are directly dependent on a vibrant economy, which is made up of property taxes received from businesses, landlords, and residents, which will be negatively impacted from the economic effects of COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas the business base in Grimsby is made up mostly of small and medium-sized businesses such as restaurants, pubs, personal services, etc., who make major contributions to the local economy through employment, tourism, retail sales, etc., which are currently shut down and may never reopen, thus decreasing the future of Grimsby's tax revenues. Whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has caused and will cause more considerable health and economic disruption for an indeterminate period, and non-essential businesses of Grimsby, either directly through their landlords, pay business property taxes at 2 to 3 times the residential rates and have been mandated to shut down, making it inappropriate for the town, Niagara Region, and Ontario Ministry of Education to be collecting any taxes during the mandated shutdown period. Thus, their opportunity to earn income to enable them to pay taxes has been taken away by government, who also want to collect them. Whereas our local Grimsby businesses are now faced with a shutdown, not of their choice, will have many other financial hardships to solve. But this would be a significant step in ensuring a resurgent retail economy necessary for the vibrancy and revenues of the town. Whereas a future consequence for Grimsby and Niagara Region of not providing relief to these non-operating enterprises is that many will not reopen and the local economy will be crippled for years. Thus, what we do today or don't do will have a future impact on Grimsby's future tax revenue. Therefore, be it resolved. So we're going to take the impact study out of that because we know that that's outside our mandate. So if that's okay with the mover and the seconder. And then, okay, so change it to therefore be it resolved that tax perform or town staff monitor the effects of COVID-19 on the shortfall of future businesses and property tax revenues from the merchants of Grimsby. And furthermore, to investigate any potential assistance we can offer local merchants and service enterprises, as it's inappropriate that businesses be charged for the period they are shut down. And that's a recorded vote again. Councillor Bothwell.
Yay.
Councillor Bothwell's a yay. Councillor Dunstall.
A yay.
Councillor Dunstall is a yay. Councillor Frake.
Yay.
Councillor Frake is a yay. Councillor Cadwell.
Yay.
Councillor Cadwell is a yay. Councillor Ritchie.
Yay.
Councillor Ritchie is a yay. Councillor Sharp.
Yay.
Councillor Sharp is a yay. Councillor Bain.
One clarification, if I may, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted, is this only to cover the 10% of our taxpayers who are businesses and not the 90% who are potentially laid off?
I just read the resolution. I don't know how it.
I didn't hear anything about the 90% of people who might be laid off. So is it just businesses is what we're voting on? Okay, Councillor Frake is nodding his head yes.
Yes.
I think that's to the others.
Councillor Vane,
I'll-
yay or nay?
I'm going to say nay. That's
All
not
right.
fair to taxpayers.
Councillor Vane is a nay. Councillor Vardy?
Yay.
Councillor Vardy is a yay, and myself, I'm a yay. So that is carried. Up next, we have reconsideration of bylaw 20-33, being a bylaw to set remuneration for members of council and to repeal bylaw 1613. And Councillor Dunstall is the mover on that, and Councillor Frake is the seconder on that. And do we have any discussion about the reconsideration? No, I guess there's no discussion about the reconsideration. We do need 2/3 for that, and this is to look into repealing the bylaw, which was the percentage increase that was done retroactively. For the reconsideration, Councillor Bothwell.
Yay.
Councillor Bothwell is a yay. Councillor Dunstall.
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Dunstall is a yay. Councillor Frake.
Yay.
Councillor Frake is a yay. Councillor Cadwell. Pardon me?
Nay?
Councillor Cadwell is a nay. Councillor Ritchie.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no discussion on this. I know many people have donated their money already. I'm a nay.
Councillor Ritchie is a nay. Councillor Sharp.
Nay.
Councillor Sharp is a nay. Councillor Vane.
Nay, I already donated it.
Councillor Vane is a nay. Councillor Vardy.
Yay.
Councillor Vardy is a yay, and myself, I am a yay. But we didn't get 2/3, so no, we can't look at rolling back our cost of living increase. So that is defeated. We have a notice of motion requested by Councillor Vane, extending property tax assistance waive of interest payment on late fees. Resolved that staff be directed to investigate the possibility of extending the property tax assistance waive interest payment on late fees until October 1st, 2020, and to report back to council. Oh, sorry. I have to read this. I acknowledge that the notice of motion will be given consideration at the next council meeting. Thank you. Next notice of motion requested by Councillor Vane, Councillor composition and ward boundary review. Whereas the town of Grimsby has seen growth since the 2014 election, and whereas a ward boundary review is recommended when the wards are out of alignment by more than 25%, and whereas it may be beneficial to review council composition from 8 members and a head of council to 4 members and a head of council for the 22 to 26 term of council, be it resolved that staff direct to review council composition along with a ward boundary review and report back to council. I acknowledge that the notice of motion will be given consideration at the next council meeting. Another notice of motion, support for commercial rent assistance program, requested by Councillor Ritchie, seconded by Councillor Vane. Whereas these are unprecedented times that have not been seen in generations, and whereas April 16th, 2020, the Canadian federal government announced a new program called Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance. And whereas the program is to be developed in unison with the provincial and territorial counterparts, and whereas this program is to provide relief to small businesses in Grimsby and throughout Canada with their rent for the months of April, May, and June. And whereas many provincial programs have been announced to date, but have generally aimed at the residential rather than the commercial rent markets, and whereas many small businesses in the town of Grimsby have been affected financially due to COVID-19, thus making rent payments difficult, therefore be it resolved that the town of Grimsby endorse this program wholeheartedly and request the federal government of Canada to work with its provincial and territorial partners to expedite this program and offer this program as soon as possible. And be it further resolved that the town of Grimsby asks the federal government and provincial and territorial partners to look at the possibility of extending this program if the impacts of COVID-19 continue past the month of June, and be it further resolved that the town of Grimsby asks the federal government and its provincial and territorial partners to make this program 100% forgiving to the small businesses affected, and be it further resolved that this motion be distributed to the Right Honourable Prime Minister of Canada, the Honourable Minister of Finance, the Honourable Premier of Ontario, and all municipalities in Ontario. I acknowledge that the notice of motion will be given consideration at the next council meeting. Next, we have correspondence. Need a mover and seconder on correspondence from Region of Niagara. Got a mover is Councillor Cadwell, seconded by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Cadwell, seconded by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the correspondence received from Region of Niagara with reference to the 2019 Employment Inventory Results Report 2019, the official plan, consultation details, and revised framework, the development applications monitoring report 2019 year end, considerations of the City of Niagara Falls withdrawing from the Regional Waste Management Services, the Cannabis Workshop Summary, and the recent changes to the Niagara Region's Waste Management Services programs as a result of COVID-19 be received. And recorded vote, Councillor Bothwell. Oh, questions? Councillor Frake, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I need some assistance here. I'd like to bring forward one of the notices of motion to now. How do I go about that?
Yeah, we just need 2/3 to bring it forward.
What do you need me to say?
Which one is it, first off?
Councillor Vane's first motion, extending property tax assistance. I don't see why we have to wait for that. I think we should just do it now.
Yeah.
Why wait another 2 weeks, and that which will be another 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think we can. The clerk's just writing this one out on the fly, so if we just be a little patient, we can. Councillor Sharp.
Just a point of clarification. So when are the tax? When is it waived until? Is it waived until June?
Is there a date on it? Where is that one?
Sorry, to be clear, the past one, the one that we passed in the past, we waived taxes until the end of May, which was the beginning of June, right? So we're in April still, and so the taxes are waived. So are we a little bit ahead of the game to suspend the rules, and we can bring this later? We don't even know what will happen.
Yeah, it does say to extend it until October 1st, 2020.
What is it currently?
It's currently till June 1st, I believe.
Oh, and what's the date today? April
20th, 4/20.
So that's like, there's still 40 days.
No, it's not. Raise your little hand.
I think our treasurer wants to comment on this.
So the current motion that was passed was to waive penalty and interest until June 30th. That was passed at I believe it was the last council meeting.
June 30th. Whoa.
June 30th, yeah. And so now I guess the notice of motion looks to waive further till October 1st. Can we change that to September 30th? Just to stay consistent, so it'd be an additional 3 months instead of October 1st.
Can we waive the rules before we discuss this?
Sure, why don't we do that first? Need a mover and seconder to waive the rules. Councillor Bain and Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Bain, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the rules of procedures be suspended in regards to S520 of bylaw 0781 to govern the procedures of council, local board and committee meetings. Recorded vote, Councillor Bothwell.
Yay.
Councillor Bothwell is a yay. Councillor Dunstall.
Yay.
Councillor Dunstall is a yay. Councillor Frake.
Yay.
Councillor Frake is a yay. Councillor Cadwell.
Yay.
Councillor Cadwell is a yay. Councillor Ritchie.
Yay.
Councillor Ritchie is a yay. Councillor Sharp.
Yay.
Councillor Sharp is a yay. Councillor Bain.
Yay.
Councillor Bain is a yay. Councillor Vardy.
Yay.
Councillor Vardy is a yay, and myself is a yay. So the rules are suspended, so we can comment on this now. First up, we have Councillor Bothwell.
Actually, thank you. I was going to be commenting on the correspondence, which was why I had raised hand originally, but I fully support this. I'll comment though quickly because I understand that the province has also suspended the payment of school board taxes, I think until the same date, October 1st or September 30th as well. So that gives municipalities the ability to hold on to some of that money as well. So yeah, I think it's timely that we look at moving this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Councillor Bain.
I just wanted, the reason I brought this forward is, and it's not that I was being difficult with Councillor Frake's bill on the businesses, it's just that 90% of our town is made up of residential taxpayers. And I've had some taxpayers literally in tears that are begging us to put off our payments till the end of the year because they've been laid off or they just don't have the money right now. And you know, I mean, we're all hurting. I don't care who we are, or how much money we got. We're all hurting with what's going on. So we've got to help the people as much as possible. And I think by putting it off till October, and I think we're being naive if we think we're going to be back out in the streets by the summertime, to be honest with you. I think we just need to look at the rest of the world where China's got a 30% reinfection rate right now. So I think October 1st, I think is or September 30th. I'm okay with the change to September 30th. But I think we'll probably be looking at it longer than that after this. But for the time being, I would agree with changing it to September 30th. And I really hope that we're all going to get behind this because it's not just businesses we got to look at, it's the residents too. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I just had a question for the treasurer. He had mentioned earlier, was there anyone who was late on their taxes, or what? Can you tell me that? Like, is there any differences between like what is usual and what happened? Stephen, can you answer that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah, so you mentioned that there was only one person from our prepayment plan who was not sufficient on the taxes. Were there other people that didn't pay taxes on the May 1st deadline, or?
No, not May 1st. So we had a monthly pre-authorized due date last Wednesday. on the 15th. And that would have represented maybe a few thousand ratepayers. And only one of those payments came back NSF. And that's actually, believe it or not, lower than the average. The average is usually around 5. So I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. So what I'm leading to here is that we want to make it possible for anyone that can't pay their taxes, so you wouldn't have to pay any late fees. But if you can pay your taxes, and then we have programs to pay them. A lot of people pay them through their mortgage. A lot of people pay them through a prepaid, either monthly or quarterly. Some people come and drop a check off at Town Hall, which I think they can still do through a mailbox or through online. But so I encourage people, if you can, to pay your taxes. But I will support that if you can't pay your taxes, that we can extend the waiver of interest and late fees.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Seeing no further questions on this, or do we have? Oh, Stephen, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to kind of give council a heads up in terms of by extending the deadline or the waiver of penalty and interest to September 30th, it could potentially mean an additional loss in revenue of about $75,000.
Yeah, Councillor Sharp, a follow-up?
Thanks for mentioning that, Stephen. So the past waiver of tax late fees was projected at about $60,000, and then this could be an additional $75,000. And that's cumulative, or is that is it now 75, or is it now 135?
Yes, it would be an additional 75.
135,000?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Now, I mean, we don't, it's all going to depend on how many residents and businesses actually paid their taxes. These are estimates only, but from past experience, from what we know, hopefully, hopefully most residents will be able to pay their taxes, and we absolutely strongly encourage all those that have the ability to pay. But I just wanted council to know the impacts of extending the waiver.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Councillor Vardy?
Yeah, just so I'm clear in my understanding, our potential loss is about 75,000. Stephen? Which is about the cost of a lawnmower, right?
Yes. Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Bain?
There we go. Yeah, you know what? I mean, I think if we're going to do stuff for business, we've got to consider the people in the town too. Like, I'm not kidding when I say that some people have phoned me up in tears, and it's not fair. This is a difficult time. And in reference to the lawnmower, which is in reserve funds and we can't touch anyways for this, it has no bearing. But as far as the people, we have to look out for the people as well as the business. And I do appreciate that at the end of the day, if we got the maximum hit, it's going to be a 1% increase just to cover this. This is not something
This is Councillor Bain, just a clarification. This is for everyone. This isn't just business right here. So
this is for
we're
everyone.
moving forward. Yeah.
For everyone. No, but I'm saying in regards to Councillor Frake's motion, it's focused on businesses, which I fully support. And I fully do, but I still think we are not the ones that should be doing as much. I think it's the province and the federal government. But as far as the residents that have been phoning, a lot of them are very afraid that they're not going to be able to pay their taxes at all. Now, having listened to Mr. Gruninger, if people can pay your taxes, please pay them. The town still must go. We must still pay our employees. And if people choose not to pay them just to take advantage, it could end up impacting our tax levy in the future. But for now, if somebody is desperately in trouble, and if it's a single person or a family, the whole family has gotten laid off, then let's this is such a small step for us. Just my opinion, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Frake?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Stephen. You said it's the first, the first period of potential losses in deferred taxes would be 75 grand?
That's correct.
Not lost, but deferred. So what you're saying that we've already collected that. So there's no loss there now.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood. So
yeah, I mean, you said that there's a potential of 75,000 in this period, and potentially another 75,000 if we push it out to September the 30th.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. In lost interest and penalty revenue.
Yeah. Okay. So right now, what we're collecting, so people probably are going to try. I'm sure the people in Grimsby just want to pay their taxes. I mean, everybody wants to pay their taxes. Otherwise, they'll get collected one way or the other. So maybe we'll see more people wanting to defer that at the next tranche because they'll start to feel the pinch even more. That's why I wanted to take Councillor Vane's motion and move it forward, because I think you'll start to see more people hurting in the next time around. That's my thought. I'm not an economist by any means, but I think it will probably happen.
Yeah, I would agree. And from what we've seen over the last couple weeks in terms of the ability to pay, we might be able to, those losses in revenue might be mitigated a bit. So that's a good thing. But I agree with you, Councillor Frake, that I think this will only get potentially worse as we go on, as the effects of this deepen.
Well, it's good to know we're still collecting taxes and people are still out there paying, even though they know for them. But anyways, yes. And you did say, I think I heard you made a statement there earlier that we have plenty of cash.
Yeah, we're good with cash right now, but you never know. I had mentioned, I think, to some councillors, I got an invoice sitting on my desk for about $7.5 million that the region wants.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, within a few weeks. So, you know, and the region as of yet hasn't deferred their tax payments. So, yeah, I definitely recommend or would like it if residents that have the ability to pay to continue to do so.
It's unfortunate that Councillor Furtick is gone. I think he's offline, isn't he not? He is. Maybe we could give him a little task to go back to the region and see if he can do something about that. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And I'll be there at the regional council meeting on this Thursday. Well, virtually, remotely, I'll be there, and that will certainly come up because I think it'll come up probably 12 times from 12 different councillors or mayors. So the municipalities will be having a loud voice on Thursday night. Councillor Ritchie, I guess you're up next.
I'd just like you to call the question.
Everyone spoke once on it, so I will call the question. I just need a seconder on this motion. Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that staff be directed to investigate the possibility of extending the property tax assistant waive interest payment on late fees until September 30th, 2020 and report back to council. Councillor Bothwell?
Sorry, this is just for them to investigate. We're not passing a motion to do it.
Is this different? Yeah, it's to investigate.
So it'll end up coming back to council and we'll be voting on it again.
Yeah, Is that different than what the mover and seconder want? Oh yeah, it's investigated. It's keeping in terms with the notice of motion. So this will just move it ahead by 2 weeks if Stephen's quick with the report.
Okay,
Um,
yay.
Councillor Bothwell's a yay. Councillor Dunstall?
Yay.
Councillor Dunstall's a yay. Councillor Frake?
Yay.
Councillor Frake is a yay. Councillor Cadwell?
Yay.
Councillor Cadwell's a yay. Councillor Ritchie?
Yay.
Councillor Ritchie is a yay. Councillor Sharp?
Yay.
Councillor Sharp is a yay. Councillor Bain? Councillor Bain is a yay. Councillor Vardy?
Okay.
Councillor Vardy's a yay and myself a yay, so that's carried. All right, we're going to move back to the correspondence, and I read it once. Councillor Bothwell, I wanted to speak on that, so Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I just, I know all of the correspondence was kind of rolled into one big motion. I just wanted to comment on two of them. The 2019 employment data is an excellent resource, and I think that I'm hopeful that we, the GDAC and whatever, actually get that information and that data and the GS data from the region, because they went door to door to 479 Grimsby businesses and gathered a whole lot of data, much more than that survey that was recently done on the impacts of COVID. So it would, combined with that, is really great information. So I think if people have an opportunity to go look at that survey, it's well worth it in that correspondence document and the links to it. It also talks about how long some of the businesses have been in business, which was one of the concerns I had with the survey, that on COVID, that it didn't identify how long some of the businesses had been around. And that survey done by the region annually, and it goes back historically for a number of years, is an excellent document. So I hope that GDAC and our new economic development officer makes use of that. The other comment on correspondence is the official plan. The March 11th report on the official plan timelines. It talks about consulting with the municipalities and doing workshops in the second quarter and third quarter of 2020. And it will be providing information on the growth allocations and the land needs. I just wondered if Mayor Jordan, if yourself or Councillor Furtick can ask if there's any impact because of COVID on those timelines, and if we can still expect to hear from the region coming back to council with those consultations on the growth allocations, which would be second quarter of, so anytime now, April, May, June. If you could just check and see if they're still going to be proceeding with that, because I'm just interested in seeing what they're asking us for populations. Thank you.
Sir Bothwell, I'll certainly add that to my action items for Thursday council meeting. Seeing no further questions on this, I'll read the resolution again. Moved by Councillor Cadwell, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that correspondence received from Region of Niagara with reference to the 2019 Employment Inventory Results Report 2019, the official plan consultation details and revised framework, the Development Applications Monitoring Report 2019 year-end, considerations of the City of Niagara Falls withdrawing from Regional Waste Management Services, the Cannabis Workshop Summary, and the recent changes to the Niagara Region's waste management and programs as a result of COVID-19 be received. Recorded vote, Councillor Bothwell?
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Dunstall?
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Frake?
Yay.
It's a yay. Councillor Cadwell?
Yay.
It's a yay. Councillor Ritchie?
Yay.
Councillor, that's a yay. Councillor Sharp?
Yay.
Councillor Sharp's a yay. Councillor Bain?
Yay.
Councillor Bain's a yay. Councillor Vardy?
Yay.
Councillor Vardy's a yay. Myself is a yay, so that's carried. This is about the correspondence from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing with reference to labor deployment. Need a mover and seconder, or is, moved by Councillor Bain, second by Councillor Ritchie. Any discussion? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Bain, second by Councillor Ritchie. Resolved that the correspondence received from Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing with reference to labor deployment be received. Councillor Bothwell?
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Dunstall?
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Frake? It's a yay. Councillor Cadwell?
Yay.
It's a yay. Councillor Ritchie?
Yay.
It's a yay. Councillor Sharp?
Yay.
It's a yay. Councillor Bain?
Yay.
It's a yay. Councillor Vardy?
Yay.
That's a yay. And myself, it's a yay. That's carried. Need a mover and seconder for the first reading of the bylaw. Councillor Bain, Councillor Dunstall. Moved by Councillor Bain, second by Councillor Dunstall. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws number 20-39 and 20-40 inclusive, and that be read a first time. That the same be read a first time. Councillor Bothwell.
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Dunstall.
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Frake.
Yay.
It's a yay. Councillor Cadwell.
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Ritchie.
Nay.
That's a nay. Councillor Sharp.
Yay.
It's a yay. Councillor Bain.
Yay.
It's a yay. Councillor Vardy.
Yay.
It's a yay. Myself, it's a yay. So that's carried. Yeah. Before I read the second reading and third reading of the bylaws, any new business? Councillor Vardy, I saw your hand up first.
As some of you may know, before I retired, I was an employee at the Public Health Agency of Canada and actually Associate Director General of the Center for Immunization and Infectious Respiratory Disease. So my former colleagues are the people at the federal level who are on the front line of this pandemic. And I would just like to give them a shout out. You know, having lived through other pandemics at the Public Health Agency like H1N1, SARS, I know what they're going through. And I really just want to give them a shout out. I know how hard they're working. I stay in touch with my colleagues and to see how they're doing. And I guess I want people to know how hard everyone's working and how sincere they are in really wanting to protect the health and well-being of Canadians. And, you know, on a more local level, you know, our first responders are the people that are working in the hospital. They're just doing such a great job. And I know that the counselor's raise was quite controversial. And Councillor Frake, myself, and Bothwell have donated our raise to the West Lincoln rebuild. So, you know, it's a way to support them. And I guess not everyone is in a position to help, but I guess it's just a request for those who are in a position to help. If you can, please do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy. Councillor Bain?
A couple of things. First of all, just in regards to the donation thing, just as this whole pandemic started happening, I went out and resourced over 100 rolls of toilet paper just to give to our food bank. I've also taken more than this raise that we're getting and donated it, and I know other members have too. So I don't think it's something we all need to advertise. We all did our bit, and we'll all do our bit. One other thing too, this is kind of just a off the cuff thing because it does affect us. We're close to the border. Donald Trump, or the President Donald Trump, just signed an order, an executive order suspending any immigration to the U.S. So just be aware if anybody's thinking of going down there. And the last thing, this is a personal note to us as a council. I talked to a number of people lately, and surprisingly enough, when we talk about the raise and all this other stuff that we've taken, and I'm going to say this to a group, and we're all part of this group, the biggest complaint or the biggest concern that I've had raised by any constituent, and it's ongoing, is that we're not working very well together. So I'm going to suggest that we start trying to do that, okay? I'm putting that out there because that's the biggest complaint I'm getting, and I'm sure the rest of you are getting. Yes, we have people complaining because of our taxes or whatever, and I've had people in tears over the taxes, I agree. But I think as a team, we're very effective. We started off very effective, we can go back to being very effective. So I'm just putting that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Councillor Cadwell?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan. I just saw a couple things, and then I'm going to have a comment at the end. Yeah, I've just got I just want maybe yourself, Mayor Jordan, you can help me out here, and I don't see Councillor Furtick, but is there any information brought forward with regards to the regional funding support towards the new Westlake Memorial Hospital? Any response to the February 26th letter from the region's West Niagara 3 mayors and also the regional councillors? So has there been any response back, Mayor Jordan, with the commitment? Because of our commitment with HHS is the commitment is due in writing to the HHS by May 31st. So are you hearing any response back from your letter of February 26th?
I haven't had a formal response yet, but that certainly will be brought up on April 23rd. And we have our next Hamilton Health Science meeting is later this month as well. I think it's April 30th. So that will be brought up there as well. So the stakeholders will be at that meeting at that time. So I'm confident that we're going to get an answer very soon, having talked to Todd Harrison and acting CIO Tripp. So I haven't had anything in writing back yet, but as I said, we are both Councillor Furtick and myself are vehemently following up on that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's great. Look forward to hearing the news from there, because I guess the St. Catharines new hospital, there's a lot of financial donations in kind from the region. I'm sure you could explain that too. The other thing I just want to talk about briefly, I mentioned in the discussion earlier with the Open in Niagara from the Niagara region, and I just want to give I got an email from Nancy Simon, just given it's a good news story that the ideas will be sharing with the business communities in that. But in the email, I'm just going to read it too. It's special thanks to Mike Williscraft, Mary Jo Clemens, and Rebecca Shelley for sharing our good news concept. We've already had 4 businesses respond with some great ideas. So this is good. Things are moving in the right direction for the businesses with the support in that too. And also with the our raise, I donated my raise to the GBF. I did a little bit of research. They're in very dire straits for funds and with their food bank and that. So I know there's a lot of stuff flying around on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. I won't go on Facebook. But just for the record, as mentioned, a lot of councils have donated their raise, and mine went to GBF. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cadwell. Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I understand that now that we're no longer having standing committees or advisory committee meetings, that there's just a bit of a gap of information to the public on where we stand with some of the outstanding items on those committees. So I would respectfully ask if there's a possible way for directors of staff that are on those standing committees that would normally prepare a status update or a status report on planning. We had a regular director's information report on the status of developments. On Heritage, we had a regular update on the status of Heritage, the work plan and where we were on some of those things. And I think Rec also, the director also used to do a director's information report. It would be great if just for the public to keep them informed as to the status of some of those outstanding items on those standing committees and advisory committees. Just an update, not putting any pressure on deliverables on any of those things, but just to give us a handle as where we are on some of those, especially developments. People just want to kind of know, are they progressing in their neighborhood or not? And that would be helpful. So it's just an little quickie information update on the agendas for council. And part of that reason I'm asking for that is because the site alteration bylaw is coming up, expiring actually May 30th. And it was due for a public consultation, which I think has been deferred. But I'm expecting we'll maybe see something coming up in May for that, so that we can make sure that we've got a plan in place when that moratorium is lifted, especially since we have dump trucks now moving along Kemp Road. So it would be interesting just to get an update on that and the cannabis, the status of the cannabis growing facilities land use study. There was going to be a public meeting. I know it's probably deferred as well, but which it was. But just for the sake of the public understanding, as we have our regular council meetings where we are on some of these items, it would just be really great to have that update provided, as well as the employee code of conduct, I think was coming back with the whistleblower provision in it as well. So just to get some information on where we stand on some of those. I understand totally that our business right now is COVID focused. It's not that, it's just for the sake of continuity and somehow in our reporting, so we know where we are. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. The clerk has noted that that's something that we're going to move forward with, and hopefully we'll have updates from all the directors for the next council meeting. Thank you. Thanks for that suggestion. I think it's a really good idea, and it certainly can be a positive note to show that we are moving forward with these things. It's not just all the pandemic. Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to go back to your opening comments about the terrible shootings in Nova Scotia and the many victims and their families. I'd like to echo what you said in the early stages of the meeting, but also I'd like to suggest, if we haven't done already, and that's lowering the flag at Town Hall in their honor. I don't know if that's already been done, but if it hasn't, I'd like to suggest that. That's it for me.
Thank you, Councillor Frake. That was already tomorrow. The flags will be, when they're raised up, they will be at half-mast. Councillor Vane.
Sorry, I just wanted to quickly follow up on Councillor Bothwell's comment, and I don't know, I know you answered about the clerk following up with the directors. How are we doing with committee of the whole? Shouldn't we be trying to move that along because that would get everything sorted out right away?
Councillor Vane, we're looking at committee of the whole for June 1st. Things have been a little thrown on their head, as you can quite imagine, but we're still looking for June 1st for committee of the whole. Councillor Sharp.
I just wanted to put a little plug out there. It's a bit delayed, but there was a reunion scheduled for the Grimsby Secondary School. It was scheduled on May 15th, 16th. That's the long weekend in May, and it's been postponed. Or it's been, yeah, postponed is the right word. It's not canceled. It's been moved to next year, 2021. I think it's still on the May long weekend, but there'll be some more information coming out. So for anyone that hasn't already seen that, the GSS 2020 reunion is postponed until 2021. If you have any questions, you can contact me, or there's a reunion committee and they can help you out.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Just a little bit of new business from myself, seeing everyone else has spoken. Just that as mayor, I've continued to lobby with both the provincial and the federal government, and I realized that we as a municipality, our hands are somewhat tied about reducing costs to both individuals and businesses. But I've been working tirelessly lobbying towards the federal and provincial government, and I do have some plans that I will announce fairly soon. I just haven't had time to get it together to talk about it tonight, but it will be coming along the pipe. So without anything more, I just will give some more details very soon. So now that seeing no further new business, we need a mover and seconder for the second and third reading of the bylaws. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws number 20-39 and 20-40 inclusive, read a first time, now be read a second and third time, and finally passed, with the mayor and town clerk to sign and seal the same, and rule of council contrary notwithstanding. Recorded vote, of course. Councillor Bothwell.
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Dunstall.
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Frake.
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Cadwell.
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Ritchie.
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Sharp.
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Vane.
Yay.
That's a yay. Councillor Vardy.
Yay.
That's a yay. And myself's a yay. So that's carried. Next meeting of council is scheduled for Monday, May 4th, 2020, 7 p.m. It will be remote again. And thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. Council is adjourned. Good night.